Heavy clouds hanging over the horizon slowly swallowed up the sunlight, plunging the earth into an ominous semi-darkness. And in this silence, foreshadowing a storm, a crack was heard, and lightning pierced the sky, illuminating everything around with its ominous light. The four-eyed demon's unwavering, greedy gaze, full of insatiable hunger and sinister anticipation, burned through the victim. These four eyes reflected only one thing: the thirst to devour, destroy, take possession. The hungry, inhuman gaze of the bear-like monster, like a dark pool, sucked its target in. In the depths of these eyes, devoid of light and soul, only a primordial hunger was reflected, knowing no mercy or compassion. The demon's eyes burned with impatience as they prowled around their prey, preparing to leap up and devour it. The last drop of patience boiled inside the demon. With a hiss like a snake, he, the four-eyed monster, rushed towards his victim like a shadow, leaving her no chance for salvation. Suddenly, as if from nowhere, someone appeared whose movement was so fast that it could hardly be seen. In the blink of an eye, the light of magic flashed, and the demon's head separated from the body, falling to the ground with a dull thud. The huge, bear-like monster, usually instilling fear with its very appearance, froze, astonished by what it saw. Its usually fierce eyes were now full of genuine fear. It looked at the defeated demon with alarm and horror. The surviving demon disappeared, leaving the man alone in the dark silence. Instead of the expected triumph, he felt only growing confusion. Something was wrong. The air seemed to tremble with someone's quiet sobs, but where would they come from in the demon world? Unable to hide the horror that gripped him, reflected in every feature of his face, the man uttered the question in a trembling voice. In the middle of the rough rocky ground, like a delicate flower among the weeds, lay a crying human baby, its tiny body shivering with cold and fear, seemingly out of place in this harsh place. A terrible bear roar rolled through the forest like a thunderclap, causing not only the leaves but the tree trunks themselves to tremble. The vibration of its power was felt in every cell of the living creature, instilling fear in the hearts of the forest dwellers. The mythical creatures, seized with terror, fled from the bear's roar. The bear shuddered in surprise when a human child appeared behind him. Confusion twisted the bear's face, usually so imperturbable. It was as if an unknown hand had painted questions, doubts, and complete confusion on it. His nose, usually sensitive to the scents of the forest, now trembled helplessly. Suddenly, like lightning on a clear day, the boy dealt the bear a crushing blow. The beast didn't even have time to blink before its consciousness faded and its mighty body fell to the ground. The blow was so strong that a large piece broke off his horn. Under the guy's blow, the bear breathed its last. The dinner he carried was not just food. It was the hope of his grandfather's smile, and this thought filled the warrior's eyes with radiance. The smoke rising from the chimney on the roof of the house promised the warmth and comfort of a home. The boy reported his return to his grandfather, who, without getting out of bed, called out to him in a weak voice. The man looked tired and was glad to see Edel coming home. Edel, proud of his catch, dragged the bear into the house. The young man proudly announced his hunt and his desire to feed his grandfather a bear casserole. The grandfather looked at the young hunter with a smile. Exhaling, the grandfather answered him in agreement. Edel was busy with the bear. At that time, the man started talking about how he had raised him for 12 years, and that in their world, the law of the jungle is a given. Lying in bed, the grandfather spoke of Edel's strength and independence, of his ability to overcome any difficulties on his own. The boy listened, wondering what had made the old man suddenly talk about this. The boy will never forget his grandfather's kindness, and gratitude will live in his heart forever. The tragic events of 12 years ago, when the grandfather saved the baby from demons, forever linked their destinies. The man taught the boy magic. Edel looked at his hand with admiration, emitting magical light. The young man kept his gaze on the dragon. Edel looked at his hand with a smile. The boy was happy. Every day brought him joy, and for this, he thanked his grandfather. Grandpa's eyes filled with tears of affection as he admired the boy's face shining with happiness. Pride for his grandson and boundless love could be seen in every wrinkle around his eyes. The man raised his head, smiled, and told the boy that he agreed. The old man looked at his trembling hands. With a hollow smile, he called out to the boy. The man told the boy about his imminent death. The boy listened with a confused look about his grandfather's last will. Confused by the incomprehensible words, Edel poured out his emotions, and the old man in response tried to calm him down. Tears flowed down the young man's cheeks, and his grandfather, gently touching his face, calmed him down, saying that everything was okay. Grandfather consoled Edel, saying that death was inevitable for everyone and insisted that he listen to him. The boy continued to cry. The old magician said that after his death he would return to the human world. Having stopped crying, the young man asked again about the human world. The loot the boy had brought was still lying on the floor as the grandfather explained that humans, unlike demons, had something in common with them. The old man revealed that the only way for Edel to enter the human world was to pass through a dungeon known as the Abyss, which led to the demon world. The grandfather, with concern on his face, said that although this was a difficult test, the boy would cope with everything. The man gave the young man a compass with a letter. Clutching the compass in his hand and not taking his eyes off the letter, the boy listened as his grandfather instructed him to follow this compass into the dungeon. The grandfather told the boy that the letter was addressed to Maribel, Ramirez's best student, that is, to himself. He also added that she was famous in the human world, so finding her would not be a problem. The crackling of the fireplace eased the tense atmosphere in the house. Ramirez, with confidence in his voice, said that he trusted her to take care of the boy, and after a cough overtook him, the boy called out to his grandfather. The boy's eyes reflected pain and tears as he looked at the teacher. Grandfather's cane rested against the wall. The old man declared that the boy had thanked him enough for everything, but in his opinion, the true gratitude should be addressed to Edel. Having said his last words of gratitude, the grandfather passed away. Edel cried, clutching the sheets, barely holding back his sobs. The pain of loss was tearing at his heart. The roof of the house, marked by a chimney, no longer knew the warmth of the fireplace smoke. Edel stood at his grandfather's resting place, feeling grief grip his heart. The boy thanked his grandfather from the bottom of his heart for raising him. The young man, looking at the compass, announced his departure on a journey. Clutching the compass, the boy told of his mission, to cross the abyss and find a certain Maribel in the human world. Having said goodbye to his grandfather, the young man went into the dungeon. Somewhere in this dungeon, a voice was heard about a staircase being found. The team stood out of breath before the stairs. One of the group members announced that they had reached level 30. The lovely girls rejoiced after achieving their goal after a month of hard preparation. The gentleman on the team commented that the demons, even on the upper levels, were so strong and numerous that the work was difficult. The man with the mustache said that they had reached the goal of 30 levels, but when it came to food and supplies, they were at the limit. The guy standing next to the girl from the team asked how many levels there were in total. The team, exhausted, discussed the upcoming difficulties. Someone's voice mentioned the 4 who had reached level 50, but most only sighed longingly for the remaining 20. The boys couldn't believe that even the 4 heroes hadn't reached the lowest level yet. At that moment, a silhouette of a mythical bird appeared behind a rock in the dungeon. The girl in the hat was burning with curiosity, wanting to know what was hidden at the bottom of the cave. Step by step, climbing up, the girl spoke of the dark legends that connect this place with the demonic kingdom. Suddenly, a large shadow looms over her. The 2-headed bird demon, radiating terror, fell upon the girl in the hat, forcefully slamming her into the ground. A gasp of pain escaped her chest as she coughed, stunned by the sudden blow, her face contorted in agony. The dark-haired girl called out to Tia, while the guy standing next to her was shocked by the quick attack. The presence of the mythical 2-headed bird caused the team to freeze in inaction. Taking a battle formation, the team drew their weapons. Their demand is the release of the girl, wanting to destroy the demon. A hand emitting a magical glow. Edel cast a spell. With a powerful spell, the boy beheaded the demon. The powerful smoke whirlwind created by Edel's spell nearly knocked the warriors from the team off their feet, while the demon's headless body fell to the ground with a crash. The boys watched what happened in confusion. The shocked guy tried to understand who else, besides them, could have wandered into this place. Edel cast a questioning glance, wondering if the new arrivals were human. Edel waved his hand to get attention, but a guy from the team interrupted him, ordering him to stay where he was. When the guy asked if he was alone, the young man looked back questioningly and confirmed that he was. The young man couldn't believe that someone had gotten all the way here alone. The guy thought it necessary to say that this was the 30th floor, to which the boy responded with a simple confirmation that this was clear to him. The team was shocked to learn from the young man that there were still 30 floors ahead. The boy continued waving towards the company. The man with the mustache, looking at the boy, asked the boy who he was. In response, the boy asked with some disdain whether he thought that he was the only one who had risen from the very bottom. In the young man's eyes there burned a desire to move forward, towards the world of people. With clenched fists, the boy resolutely rushed forward into the very abyss. Sharp stalactites dotted the roof of the cave. The stalactites stretching downwards against the backdrop of the abyss resembled someone's fangs. Edel's blast of magic scared away all the demons at the exit. After leaving the cave, Edel breathed a sigh of relief. He had finally reached the surface. Watching the demons flee, the young man noticed that she was getting weaker with each step they took upward, a strange place. His eyes sparkled as he looked at the world of people, and he said with admiration that this is what this world of people is like. The young magician, leaning one hand on his side, stood against the backdrop of a dungeon that went down 60 floors. The young man looked around the landscape of the human world with delight, finding it much greener and more beautiful than the demon world. Edel, looking at the mountain peaks and holding in his hands a letter addressed to Maribel, said that now, in the world of people, his main task is to find this mysterious girl. A castle was visible behind the snow-capped mountain peaks. Behind the mountains there was a school that looked like a castle. School of Heroes of the Kingdom of Rhodes. The woman proudly announced that this year they had managed to form another outstanding group of students. A sign on the wall that says, "The School Principal." A girl with glasses stood behind a woman who expressed hope that they would raise new heroes. Mountain peaks. In the dense forest, among the thickets of tall bushes, a beast resembling a cat hid, and its gaze was riveted to the thicket. The silence was broken by a sudden movement, causing the animal to recoil in surprise. Edel ran through the forest and thought about how the mountains in the human world did not have the ability to move. Looking into the distance with a smile, the boy thought about, who is this Maribel, and where is she? Clutching the letter in his hand, the boy turned to a mustachioed passerby, asking about Maribel. The man replied that she taught at the School for Heroes of the Kingdom of Rhodes, located nearby. The boy immediately ran away, which caused some surprise among the passerby. The young man smiled, admiring the responsiveness and kindness of the people he met. On the way to school through the forest, the boy thought that the demons would probably demand something vital for such information, unlike those who shared it for free. School of Heroes of the Kingdom of Rhodes. A couple was walking in the school park, animatedly talking about something, and a dark-haired student passed by. There was a woman standing in the window of the building watching the couple. The woman turned around at the call with a smile. Chartier, the sweet girl with glasses who had called out to Madame Maribel, looked at the woman with a smile. The woman studied the list of this year's Hero School students provided by Chartier. Thanks to Maribel's work, the school attracted a record number of applicants this year. Looking at the list she held in her hands, the woman said that each team member played a role in achieving this result. The girl, with barely noticeable sadness in her eyes, told about the difficulties they encountered at the beginning of their journey. The royals and aristocrats, feeling hostility towards Maribel's growing school, constantly voiced their disapproval. The girl, with her eyes closed, noted that the situation had changed dramatically, and now even those who had previously criticized the school trust it with their children. To this, the woman responded that there were still many problems, as before. The girl asked if the problems they were talking about were the result of disagreements and clashes between the common people and the nobles. Maribel remained silent in response. Leaning on her hand, the woman noted that the situation was unlikely to change in the near future. Standing by the window, Chartier listened as Maribel reflected on how if a magic teacher named Ramirez had been there at that moment, perhaps things would have turned out differently. The stranger's unexpected question about Ramirez caused a sharp change in Mrs. Maribel's expression. Suddenly, Edel appeared behind the ladies and greeted them. Completely bewildered, Maribel Sama turned around to see who greeted them. Sharply grasping the handle of her weapon, Chartier turned around with a clear expression of surprise mixed with concern on her face. Protecting Madame Maribel with her hand, Chartier categorically declared that if anyone uninvited tried to enter this building, the golem must destroy them. The boy, after thinking for a moment, asked a question about the golem. The young man said that he was familiar with the object, and explained that he was the one who destroyed it. Having supplemented his story with the information that the golem he had destroyed did not even react to his presence, the young man attracted the worried glances of the ladies, who were alarmed by this fact. Thinking about the utmost importance of protecting Lady Maribel, the girl concentrated and, while speaking the necessary words, cast a powerful enchantment on the blade of her katana. Having concentrated her magical energy to the maximum and filled the spell with extreme power, Chartier prepared for a swift attack. Showing unyielding determination, the girl pointed the tip of the katana straight at Edel. The young man awaited the girl's impending attack without flinching. The boy dispelled the attack that was coming towards him. Madame Maribel and Chartier were so shocked by what they saw that they were speechless. The girl continued to protect Mrs. Maribel, shielding her with her hand. The young man looked at them with slight concern, assuming that they saw him as a threat. To stop the brewing conflict, Edel intervened and stated that his visit was connected with the delivery of a letter addressed to Mrs. Maribel. Mrs. Maribel asked if the letter was really for her, but Chartier, expressing extreme concern, blocked her and warned that this boy represented a great danger. Without moving, the boy held the letter in his hand, watching as the woman expressed her confidence that he posed no danger and expressed a strong desire to become familiar with the contents of this message. The woman took the letter in her hands to read it. She looked at him in surprise. Leaning on her hand, Maribel sighed and said that it had been over 20 years since she had heard from her teacher, Ramirez, adding that she had not considered the possibility of his absence due to going to the demon world. Clutching her head, Maribel muttered that it turned out that Ramirez had indeed crossed the abyss. Breaking off her train of thought, she suddenly raised her head and asked everyone to wait, saying that she needed a minute. The boy looked at the woman, a question in his eyes when she asked where he heard the name Ramirez. Conical roof against the sky. Sitting down at the table and placing the letter in front of her, Ramirez's student thoughtfully said that it meant that her teacher was involved in raising this young boy in the demon world. Thinking back over the image of her teacher, she asked how her mentor's life had ended. Remembering the teacher's words, the young man chuckled quietly with sadness and said that he had promised him his support and protection, even after death, watching over him from heaven. With a soft exhale, Maribel confirmed that she understood him. Clutching the letter, the director muttered quietly, as if addressing the absent Ramirez, that he had obviously entrusted her with the care of the boy. Expressing some confusion, Edel asked what was required of him next, since all he had been told was to deliver the letter to its destination. Rising from her chair, she confirmed the boy's words. Extending her hand to the boy, Maribel felt confident that her mentor had already considered such a possibility, and suggested that the young man enroll in their educational institution. As soon as the young man mentioned school, Chartier interrupted him with an angry question about what the director was saying and how she could allow this. With a gloomy expression on her face, the woman patiently listened to a stream of reproaches from the maiden, who said that she did not know the young man at all and was perplexed as to how she could accept him into the school without exams. Having stopped Chartier's discontent, Maribel explained that the young man was exempted from taking the exams by her decision, and that she guaranteed his freedom and recognized his abilities. The girl agreed because that's what the director wanted. Edel looked at the headmaster's hand on his shoulder. The woman said that she wanted to train future heroes like him at this school. She added that since Ramirez had trained him, she believed that he deserved to be here. As she left the room, the director asked Chartier to temporarily take the boy under her wing, show him everything and, if necessary, give him instructions. Chartier confirmed her readiness, and the director added that the boy lacked awareness for the human world. The young man looked at her questioningly, while the girl bowed to the director who, as she left, said that she was counting on Chartier. The girl, with a disdainful and displeased look, ordered the young man to follow her if he had time. The girl moved quickly, leaving the young man behind her at a distance of 1 step. The girl looked with disdain at the guy walking behind her. Edel called out to Chartier and asked where they were going. The boy continued to follow the girl and asked her about something, but she ignored him. Stopped, moved her heel slightly and said that, despite respecting Ms. Maribel's opinion, they could not accept a person with such limited abilities into the school. Pointing her finger at the boy, she stated firmly that she would conduct an entrance test to assess his abilities. Scratching his head in confusion, the young man asked if this test was an exam. In response, the girl stated that it was just a warm-up. As soon as the young man and the maiden stood at the edge of the thicket, at that very moment, a flock of crows flew out of the forest. After looking at the young man, the maiden announced the beginning of the task. Looking at her watch, the girl said that it was exactly 3 o'clock. She outlined the task, which consisted of going through the forest and reaching the opposite side within the allotted hour. The boy seemed to doubt that the path lay only through the forest, but the girl remained silent. After a pause, she insisted that this should not be underestimated. She explained that the journey, even by carriage on flat terrain, would take 3 hours, and there was a risk of getting lost, as well as the danger of being attacked by numerous predatory animals. The girl said that if he is not strong enough, it will be difficult for him to complete it in 1 hour. The boy watched Chartier as she suggested that if he was physically fit enough to skip the exam, then completing the assignment should not be difficult. Approaching the forest, the girl announced that she would be the first to set off on the journey. With a sly grin on her face, she suggested that if he followed her, he might feel better. After a short pause that hung in the air, she announced the start of the test by pushing off the ground with her foot. The girl rushed off, leaving the guy at the start. Her confidence radiated as she made her way through the thick forest. The inhabitants of this forest were going to attack the girl. Chartier, using magic to push everyone away from her, created a free space around herself. She destroyed one creature with magic. She asked with glee that they thought this was enough to stop her. Turning around, the girl thought that she had set the difficulty level too high. Chartier believed that, in the most optimistic scenario, only half of the current year's first-year students would cope with the task. Having freely fluttered out of the forest, the girl found herself in an open place. Having landed, the girl held herself lightly with her shoe. Adjusting her hair and smirking slyly, she wondered how long it would take him to overcome this challenge. Standing half-turned, she thought that the young man was too self-confident and that he would most likely not go even half the way. After Edel said that the girl had finally arrived, her expression changed. She turned around immediately. Chartier saw Edel in front of her, who was stretching and yawning. Speechless and with a changed expression, the girl was amazed to see the young man, as she had not expected him to appear at all and could not believe that he had completed the test so quickly. The boy, yawning, noticed that she was late, and that he had been counting on her arriving earlier even before him. Chartier asked the guy with irritation how long he had been standing there. The young man said that he spent 20 minutes there, which caused the girl to cry out in surprise and disbelief, and she asked again if he was joking when he said 20 minutes. The boy casually remarked that he had expected more difficulty, but the girl objected that this was impossible. The guy, doubtingly, pointed his finger at the girl in which direction she should look. Chartier looked in surprise. To while away the time waiting for Chartier, Edel painted a huge mythical tiger demon on the ground. The boy smiled and held the branch he was drawing with in his hand, while the girl watched in surprise. The boy closely followed the development of events, observing the girl, who, despite everything, continued to remain skeptical about the guy's words. Chartier's distrust of the boy's words was obvious. To test his veracity and perhaps dispel her doubts, she offered to play a game. Having expressed doubts about the proposed game with a hint of irony, the boy heard from the seriously minded girl and offered to the young man to run through the forest together. Coming closer, the young man confirmed his consent to the girl's proposal, readily accepting the challenge. Pressing her heel hard into the ground, the maiden declared the consequences of her defeat. She announced with some embarrassment her intention to imitate a dog and whine in front of the young man, after which the guy asked whether this action was obligatory. The girl took the starting position, tensing the muscles of her legs and torso. A deep breath filled her lungs, and she mentally checked the readiness of her body, the correct position of her feet, the tension in her muscles, the rhythm of her breathing. She was ready to run. After the start was announced, the guy instantly rushed forward with incredible speed. She was in complete confusion. Her mind refused to accept what had happened. As if in a fog, she tried to grasp the essence of what had happened, but in vain. The events eluded her understanding. The girl, trying to run, began to understand. The blurry silhouette of a young man that flashed ahead became confirmation for the girl that she would not be able to catch up with him. Out of breath, she fell to the ground. While the boy was jubilant at the castle, his victory was in sharp contrast to the state of Chartier, who sat on the ground, out of breath. Her tired look was accompanied by an ironic question about whether they had managed to reach the castle this time. With her hands on her lap, Chartier spoke of her lost promise. The girl, embarrassed by the situation, said that from now on she would imitate a dog. The guy reluctantly, with a slight feeling of awkwardness, said that this should not be done. The girl objected that this would not do. Chartier, expressing some embarrassment, explained that the need to fulfill this promise was dictated by her professional ethics, since failure to do so would make her a bad teacher. Looking down, the girl began to bark. Despite the sweat pouring down her body from running, the girl continued to bark. Chartier sat on her knees, her hands resting on the ground. The maiden barked and looked up, thinking that this was the real humiliation. The thought of the impossibility of what was happening was combined with relief that her current appearance was hidden from the eyes of teachers and students. She was worried about the thought that she might suddenly be seen like this. A look of shame appeared on Chartier's face, indicating her distress. The situation left Edel at a loss as to what to do. Edel remembered the crow that was always circling above them. Profile of a crow. The boy looked at the crow, wondering if it was possible that this bird was Maribel's messenger. A magic ball in which the silhouette of a young man was reflected. Maribel, using the raven as a lookout, watched the boy and Chartier. What she saw surprised her. The woman, while manipulating the magic ball, reported that she had sent a messenger to observe the boy and Chartier because she knew about the girl's potentially predictable behavior. Looking at the letter, the woman mentioned the name of her mentor. Continuing to monitor the boy with the help of the ball, she noted that Mr. Ramirez left behind an unusual child. Maribel saw Chartier barking in the ball. Slightly embarrassed, Mrs. Maribel said she would pretend she hadn't seen any of it. A sign called the school principal. Greeting them, Maribel asked if they were familiar with the school, while Chartier looked down silently, dejected. The girl shuddered at the director's words. The girl was very sorry that she didn't have time to show the boy the school. She gave the boy a look that was barely perceptible in contempt, her thoughts occupied by the fact that she had not expected to meet such a powerful opponent, considering his life in the demon world. Considering that even the 4 heroes couldn't enter the demon world, Virgo wondered about the power of the inhabitants of this world. The principal told the boy that she had enrolled him in school anyway. Hearing that he would now be living in a student dormitory, the boy could not hide his joy, and his face broke into a smile. Speaking about the student dormitory, the woman emphasized that each course has its own building. The director led the boy around the dormitory and said that all first-year students, boys and girls, live here. Maribel noted that no matter your status or position, everyone has the same room size. Opening the door, the woman told the young man that this was now his room. A classic room with a bed in the middle and a nightstand to the left of the bed. Maribel explained that while it may seem like the space is just for sleeping, it actually has plenty of entertainment and amenities. Approaching Edel's next door, she said that she would like to introduce her to a girl. The woman pulled the door handle and said that she knew Alice was in the room. Seeing the door open, the young lady said, "Grandma." Jumping up from her chair, she told her grandmother not to enter without permission. The sweet girl stood shyly while her grandmother introduced Alice to the young man, saying that she was her granddaughter. The woman pointed out the boy to the girl and said that he had just been transferred to the School of Heroes and asked her to look after him. The girl asked doubtfully about his transfer. The woman told the young man, who was looking at the girl with some awkwardness, that he would be in the same class as Alice and could ask her any questions. She stepped back slightly and put her hands forward in disagreement with her grandmother. The girl objected to her grandmother, saying that she did not want to do this and did not understand why she should do it. And as if with a blow, the grandmother knocked her granddaughter out, declaring that it was all because she had no friends. As she closed the door, the woman told the boy that the girl was a little strange, but that he shouldn't worry. The girl responded that she hadn't finished talking yet. The girl clutched her head and wondered why the guy had been left in her care. Embarrassed, the young man said that, although he did not understand what was happening, he was glad to meet her. The girl exhaled, saying that there was nothing that could be done. She pushed her chair back and said that she would be in the next room, and if he had any problems, he should knock on the door. The girl was holding a book when the guy asked that there was something else he should ask her about. He looked at the girl and asked what a friend was. Sitting on a chair, the girl said that this was a rather strange question. The girl explained that a friend is someone he is close to which the guy replied that it turned out that his late grandfather was his friend. The girl explained that it was more about family, adding that when he starts going to school, he will immediately have friends. To which the guy said that Alice doesn't have any friends, to which the girl looked at him with some anger. The girl got angry at the guy and kicked him out of the room. Walking up to the door and tugging at the handle, the guy wondered why she was so angry. Standing at the threshold of his room, the young man said that the room was so small and the security was too weak. Night had fallen, the sky was strewn with stars, and the boy, thinking in his room, noted that with such a number of residents in the dormitory, the losses would be horrific. The boy looked at his hand and said that just in case he would have to change something here. The young man stands in a magic circle. Bursts of magic. Wiping his forehead, the young man said with a sigh that that was all for now. There were magic spells on the shelf, walls, and door. This will keep enemies from attacking. In addition to other precautions, a trap was installed under the foot of the bed, which significantly reduced the likelihood of a successful surprise attack and allowed one to feel more at ease. Having confirmed the presence of a powerful trap on the wall, the guy assured that there was no need to worry about the killers anymore. The boy thoughtfully went over the words about tomorrow's classes in his head without having any idea what it was. The young man looked at the spell. In her room, the girl, lying on her bed, thought about why she was the one assigned to do this. She buried her face in the pillow, lamenting her inability to communicate, especially in this case, since he didn't understand the most basic things. Lying there, she began to think about what it would be like to look at it from the other side. She remembered her grandmother's words about how she didn't have any friends yet. Alice got angry and said that her grandmother didn't understand at all what she felt. The girl interrupted her train of thought and decided to go to bed. Alice decided to change her clothes when suddenly she heard some noise. Using magic, Edel was about to pass through the wall, but first he wanted to ask an additional question. Halfway through the wall, he asked why she was undressing. The surprise scared the girl so much that she covered herself with her hands out of embarrassment. With one hand, she began to gather a clod of magic in her palm. Calling Edel bad, she attacked him with her power, to which the guy was also shocked. Alice's attack with maximum power was flying towards the young man. With just one hand, he dispersed this stream. She was shocked that he managed to block her attack. Sitting on the bed, she covered herself with her hands and asked how he got there, although the guy warned that he knocked. Alice grabbed the blanket and hid under it, asking the boy not to look. The young man immediately turned around and his face showed discomfort. Confused, Alice covered herself with a blanket, wondering who he was if he could walk through walls and easily block magic. As he left the room, the young man apologized. The girl threw a pillow at the door, and the guy immediately closed it. Standing outside the door, the young man said that there was no need to be angry. The young man suggested that she must also like to walk around naked, citing the fact that he and his grandfather usually walked around like that at home. Having promised to return to the questions tomorrow, the guy headed to his room. Morning came. Edel knocked on Alice's door. Alice's gloomy figure appeared in the doorway and wished him good morning. Telling the young man that he was also in good shape, Edel, in response to her good morning, asked her what was wrong with her eyes. According to the girl, because of him, she did not sleep all night and was forced to remain on guard. The young man standing opposite the girl apologized for not knowing that people couldn't walk through walls. The girl exclaimed, because it wasn't that easy. The boy, thoughtfully scratching the back of his head, explained that in the demon world this was considered the norm. She folded her hands calmly and didn't deny the possibility that this was a normal thing in the demon world. Having said that this was the point, she suddenly exclaimed. The girl warned the boy not to tell anyone about this. The boy asked why. Alice stressed the importance of following her instructions to avoid trouble. The girl, walking ahead, promised the young man that on the way to class she would explain to him what these very classes were. Alice told Edel that the School for Heroes lasted 6 years, and now the first year had begun. The first thing they would teach him was the basics. According to the young lady, the curriculum included magic, arithmetic, martial arts, tactics, adventure, history, and many others. She added that the first year of study takes place in the form of individual lessons with a home teacher, after which group study begins. Having reached the audience, the girl announced that they were there. In the lecture room, the teacher was in his place and preparing for the lesson. Chartier clapped her hands and asked everyone to take their seats to begin the lesson. The news of the new arrival caused general surprise, and the students immediately began asking questions about the transfer exam and how difficult it was. It was suggested by the audience that Edel, standing next to the teacher, was well prepared for the translation. In the quiet of the lecture hall, adjusting her glasses which had slipped slightly down the bridge of her nose, Madame Chartier addressed the young man standing at the board. Her voice, though quiet, was clear. With it, she asked Mr. Edel to introduce himself to the class. Her gaze on the young man brought back memories of the day she had given him a test in the form of an exam. The thought of the infamous day when she had to pretend to be a dog brought a wave of embarrassment, and she couldn't imagine her students' reactions if they had witnessed the incident. Having politely greeted his new classmates, Edel, with a slight smile, explained that he still did not quite understand what school was like, but nevertheless, he was very pleased to meet everyone present in the class. Suddenly, puzzled questions and comments came from all corners of the auditorium. Students expressed their amazement at how Edel could not attend school, since even the most ordinary people attend elementary school. A loud voice rang out from among the students gathered in the auditorium. Someone, without thinking of tact, suggested that Edel probably lived in a rural area and therefore had no opportunity to attend school. The young man refuted the assumption that he was of rural origin, calmly and politely explaining that he was a native of the demon world. This statement caused further confusion among the listeners. The new student's statement caused an unexpected and profound reaction in the audience. The sudden silence and expressions of surprise on the faces of those present testified to the strong impression his words had made. Alice's face reflected slight anxiety. She thought with anxiety that she hoped for understanding from those around her. Chartier, puzzled by the boy's words, covered her face with her hand. Her silence, broken only by a soft sigh, spoke of inner unrest and confusion. The sudden silence of those around him made the young man think. He went over his last words in his mind, trying to figure out what exactly could have surprised or upset them so much. He was sure that he hadn't said anything that could have caused such a reaction. There was an unexpected pause, the silence of which was broken by a sudden, loud burst of laughter. Someone from the audience, not hiding his ignorance, laughed so loudly that everyone present turned their attention to him. The first laugh was followed by others. Someone in the audience joined in with the person who had started laughing, and soon the audience began to chuckle, which gradually grew into general laughter. Edel didn't understand the reason for this laughter. With a carefully thought-out plan, the man who had provoked laughter from the audience suddenly stood up from his seat. He expressed his complete disagreement with Edel's claim of being from the demon world, stating that it was simply impossible. The boy's gaze, full of smirk and obvious skepticism, was directed at Edel. Non-verbally, he expressed his complete disagreement with the young man's words, leaving no doubt that he considered the story about the demon world to be fiction. Edel remained motionless and showed complete calm despite the approach of that same guy, clearly showing his readiness for the upcoming interaction. Approaching Edel with obvious distrust and irritation on his face, the guy could not hide his displeasure, expressing it both with words and facial expression, asking if Edel really dared to laugh at him. The geyser stood frozen in front of Edel, separated only by the narrow strip of the teacher's desk, like a front line. Tension vibrated in the air. The teacher immediately jumped up and, standing between Geyser and Edel, gestured for both of them to stop, trying to prevent the conflict from escalating. Geyser, looking at Edel with a contemptuous grin, asked the teacher if it was true that he came from the demon world. Chartier, professionally adjusting her glasses, politely informed her that she was currently unable to answer the question posed, without explaining the reason for her refusal. Geyser merely sneered, showing that Chartier's answer meant nothing to him and that he considered himself above what was happening. His sneer was blatantly disrespectful. Geyser smiled and, heading to his seat, said that in that case he would sort out the situation himself. Looking towards the young man, the girl said that there was a free seat next to Alice and that he could sit there. The line of her outstretched arm, ending with her index finger, was aimed straight at Alice. Hearing from Alice that he was attracting attention to himself, the young man looked at her in confusion, as if not realizing his peculiarity. As a warning, she advised Edel to stay away from Geyser. Clutching a book in her hands, Chartier began her teaching duties, beginning the lesson. Chartier explained that the development of the Kingdom of Rhodes was due to the activities of the nobility and singled out Gilzerin as one of the most influential people of the time. The young man sat looking blankly at Chartier, not having the slightest idea what she was talking about. Anticipating possible questions, the girl handed the book to the young man, explaining that she did not intend to waste time on explanations later. Winking, the girl said that it was a regular textbook for consolidating knowledge, which would help him understand the essence of things, presenting information in an easy and relaxed manner. While the young man was turning the textbook given to him by the girl in his hands, Alice, frowning slightly, asked if he could read, wanting to understand whether he would be able to understand the material on his own. Putting his hand to his face as if concentrating, the young man replied that his grandfather had taught him a special method that allowed him to read automatically, meaning something beyond ordinary reading. Intrigued by the young man's words, the girl asked what this unusual technique was, and added that she had never encountered anything like it before. With his fingers spread, the young man became a conduit for magic, his eyes lit up from within, as if reflecting the light of an invisible flame. The guy seemed to have connected to some source of knowledge and began not just reading, but absorbing information directly into his brain. Having told Alice that he had already mastered almost all the contents of the book, the guy only aroused skepticism in her, because it was simply impossible to believe in such a thing. The girl began to test the young man with questions, to which, to her surprise, he answered easily and confidently. Alice asked the young man what kind of magic he used to remember, to which the young man replied that it was the most common method, but the girl, however, objected that this was, in fact, quite unusual. As soon as Chartier announced the end of the lesson, the children left the classroom without delay, anticipating the break. Sitting at the table with Edel, while the boy was busy reading, Alice wondered how long he would continue reading. Time passed unnoticed, enough for the view of nature outside the window to change. It was now the afternoon, the time when most of the work was already behind us. Chartier apologized to the students and announced that she would be conducting the martial arts lesson on her own, explaining that she had an urgent matter that required immediate attention. Holding a heavy iron sword in his hands, the boy stated that using such a weapon for training carries a real threat to life and health. Edel heard a female voice soothingly saying that the academy had excellent doctors who could heal even the most serious injuries. Observing the rules of decency, the girl smiled warmly at the young man and said words of greeting. Introducing herself as Tina, the girl looked at the guy with a very bright smile. The young man felt a little confused when Tina asked him about the possibility of sparring together, as he did not expect such a proposal. The young man, not expecting this, asked again if they were talking to him, to which the girl said that he saw someone else in front of him. The girl, energetically waving her sword, looked around at those around her, as if looking for a worthy opponent for a duel. Thrusting her sword into the ground, she said with annoyance that routine training usually didn't hold any interest for her. After Edel's origins from the demon world were revealed, she looked at him intently and spoke words that sounded like a challenge. Looking the guy in the eye with defiance, the girl challenged him, offering to fight in a duel, demonstrating her courage and confidence in her abilities. The young man, holding the sword in his hands, thought, because his weapon was in subspace, should he measure his strength with his opponent? The young man remembered Maribel's words about the need to be gentle and delicate with his students if it came to sparring. Unlike the more experienced fighters, the young man stood sideways, holding his sword slightly uncertainly. While the others were enthusiastically discussing Tina's upcoming sparring match with some stranger, Alice, turning away towards Edel, was lost in her own thoughts, not getting involved in the conversation at all. Taking a position opposite Tina, Edel told her that she was free to attack him at any time, without warning. A flame of excitement flared in Tina's eyes as she looked at Edel and said with a slight grin that he was too self-confident, as if hinting that such self-confidence could turn against him. Here she pushed off the ground with her foot and quickly rushed to attack the young man. She suddenly jumped up and announced on the run that she would probably start, making it clear that she had no intention of delaying and would get straight to the point. With incredible speed, Tina circled around Edel, found herself behind him, and immediately swung her sword, demonstrating her agility and speed. A spectator watching the fight commented that Tina really is not that easy to spot, hinting at her speed and ability to remain unnoticed. Tina was filled with self-confidence, and she was absolutely sure that she would only need one blow to defeat this boy, demonstrating her arrogance. Surpassing Tina in speed and skill, Edel instantly countered her surprise attack from behind, leaving her completely confused. The black-haired girls watching the sparring were shocked by such an unexpected turn of events, not expecting the fight to take such a turn. Tina swung back for another blow, seething with rage as she continued to think about how Edel had managed to block her previous attack without even looking. Despite the constant attacks from behind, the young man demonstrated excellent skill, successfully repelling all of the attacker's blows. The audience was stunned by what was happening. An exhausted Tina, struggling to catch her breath, couldn't understand how Edel was blocking her attacks, while Alice's gaze went to how easily he blocked Tina's attacks, remembering yesterday. Alice watched Edel with a slight worry in her eyes, wondering what kind of grueling training must have gone into shaping his extraordinary abilities. The boy turned around slightly, casting a fleeting glance at the black-haired girl standing behind him. The young man merely glanced at the girls, while Tina commanded them to attack him immediately. With eyes blazing with rage, the girls rushed to attack the guy, shouting threats that he would pay and regret everything. The girls attacked from the front, and Tina came from the rear, closing the circle and depriving Edel of any opportunity to maneuver. Without making any special effort, the young man confidently repelled all the attacks of the attackers. the ladies were so shocked by what had happened that their usually reserved faces were distorted with shock, and their eyes expressed complete confusion. Tina looked at Edel with a grimace of fury, refusing to believe that he had parried even their coordinated blows. All those present looked at what was happening in amazement, as they did not expect such a turn of events from the newcomer. For some time, the only sound in the hall was the ringing of blades. The exhausted girls, sitting on the floor, admitted their helplessness to the young man with surprise and jokingly asked if he was a monster. The victory clearly pleased the guy, and he did not fail to report it. Tina curiously asked Edel about the origin of his extraordinary maneuverability. The young man thought for a moment, trying to remember something. According to the young man, he once had the chance to fight a demon that had 100 arms, and compared to that experience, the current situation seemed insignificant to him. The girl's admiring look expressed doubt when she assumed that Edel was simply playing a trick on her. The young man, however, assured her that his story about the demon world was the pure truth. Alice watched what was happening with concern, while Tina, without wasting any time, invited the young man to join them for a cup of tea to get to know each other better. The other girls who had participated in the battle joined Tina, expressing a desire to get to know the young man better. Suddenly, Geyser called out to Edel, contemptuously calling him a demon, emphasizing his demonic origins in a humiliating manner. Looking at Geyser with poorly concealed hostility, the girl listened to his words, imbued with self-confidence, about how Edel's demonic origin delighted all the girls, because maidens love that kind of thing. With a hint of irony and a barely noticeable mockery in his voice, Geyser stated that, of course, he also dreamed of being in the demon world, as if questioning the value of this desire. With contemptuous grins on their faces, Geyser's retinue, as if echoing his thoughts, began to ridicule the young man, hinting that, in any case, they were talking about his backwater village. Not allowing Geyser to continue his insults, Tina firmly placed her hand on Edel's shoulder as if protecting him, and firmly stated that he had to stop, as even for a nobleman this was too much. Geyser, with a smug smile, declared that he disliked Edel with the utmost distaste. He expressed his intention to subject Edel to some kind of test, wanting to test him. The young man, without flinching and in a voice without a trace of emotion, explained that he had long since come to terms with the constant attempts on his life in the cruel world of demons, and therefore nothing touched him anymore. Geyser and his companions used mocking rhetoric of false threats. Through sarcastic references to the danger he supposedly posed, they demonstrated a complete lack of respect for his position. Tina, speaking about his origin, emphasized that he comes from a legendary dynasty of swordsmen whose name has long been associated with fencing mastery. According to her, it was this status that made him the next candidate for the head of the club. Even Geyser's ridicule did not shake the girl's confidence that Edel, thanks to her abilities, would easily gain the upper hand in this confrontation. The guy, barely containing his irritation, turned sharply to the girl, his gaze, full of mistrust, froze on her, and his voice, suppressed by anger, demanded that she repeat the words she had just said. Geyser's minions, speaking disparagingly of Edel, claimed that he could not surpass their leader, since Geyser himself had proven his superiority by defeating one of the most experienced members of the fencing club. Mocking Edel, Geyser, with a sarcastic grin, declared his desire to engage him in a duel, not out of sporting interest, but to finally humiliate him in front of everyone. The young man asked doubtfully whether this should be done immediately, to which the guy answered affirmatively, adding a challenge in the form of a question about whether the young man was afraid. After a short thought, during which Edel mechanically scratched the back of his head, he gave his consent. The young man, holding his hand behind his head, said that he wanted them to finish everything quickly. Geyser held his sword tightly in his hand, showing his determination and readiness for action. After calling the youth a country boy, Geyser turned his sword-holding hand and pointed the sharp blade straight at Edel. People who watched the conflict between the two young men expressed the opinion that the new guy was going to fight Geyser in the near future. Alice watched what was happening with attention and concern, while the people around her discussed the upcoming fight between the guys and expressed their opinions. When Alice looked at the guy, she felt anxious and worried. She turned to Geyser with a request to stop this conflict. The maiden felt uneasy and worried when she noticed a shining and sharp sword in Geyser's hand, which looked very dangerous and could harm Edel. The girl immediately warned that this sword was made of mithril, and its hardness is much higher than steel, so Edel's sword can break very easily. Throwing out a mocking remark, the young man emphasized the lack of formal restrictions on the choice of weapons, stating this with deliberately exaggerated seriousness. The young man, without showing any particular emotion, noted that it would not be difficult for him to cope with an ordinary sword since Geyser, according to him, had neither magical nor consecrated weapons. He thought that Edel was saying absolutely unreasonable things, and after that he decided that it would be better to tell him all the rules. Geyser believed that he could easily destroy his sword, as breaking the weapon would mean certain defeat for him, and he saw this as an opportunity to quickly achieve victory. The boy ran at the young man with a sword, and said that he was a nobleman who had decided to fight a simple village boy. He also said that he wanted Edel to thank him for this with tears in his eyes. Geyser slashed at Edel's weapon with his sword, trying to damage it and break his sword. At that moment there was a loud crack and the sword broke, making the characteristic sound of breaking metal. With a feeling of triumph and joy, Geyser thought that he had managed to break Edel's sword, and now all that was left for him to do was complete his mission, destroy Edel in order to achieve his goal. The group of nobles, worried and shocked by what had happened, turned to their leader trying to get his attention. He noticed their uneasiness and asked with interest what all the fuss was about. Geyser's hand gripped the hilt of the sword tightly. He stood there, literally paralyzed with shock, unable to move or make a sound. Despite what had happened, Edel stood motionless, as if nothing could break him. Unlike what one might expect to see a broken or damaged sword, he had a whole blade in his hand, ready for battle. Mixed feelings, mostly confusion and disappointment, were reflected on Geyser's face as he looked at his sword. He seemed unable to believe his eyes, unable to understand how his weapon could be in such a state. The young man realized with horror that his sword was practically unusable. It was broken almost to the ground. Only a few pitiful fragments remained. No one could believe their eyes. Everyone expected that Geyser's legendary sword would easily deal with Edel's ordinary weapon. But the unthinkable happened. It was Edel's sword, a mass-produced sword, that crushed Geyser's weapon. The boy fell to the ground, shocked by what had happened. At the same time, one of the spectators, still not believing his eyes, muttered that he had not even suspected the possibility of breaking Geyser's sword. Alice, her eyes shining with delight, watched the duel. Joy and surprise were mixed in her gaze, and what was happening seemed so incredible that she refused to believe her own eyes. Broken in spirit, he looked at Edel, his gaze filled with dejection and fear, like a shadow, darkening his face. Edel, unperturbed, didn't even pay attention to his defeated opponent. At this time, to everyone's surprise, Geyser said that this guy was obviously too strong. Edel, towering over his fallen opponent, looked at him with a calm, indifferent gaze. All the self-confidence that had recently blazed in the young man's eyes was now replaced by a pitiful expression of defeat. In the silence that hung over the arena after the end of the duel, the sound of his footsteps seemed deafening. The young man, as if led by an invisible force, approached Geyser. Putting the tip of the sword to the boy's neck, letting him feel the cold of the steel, the young man with icy calm asked if he wanted to continue his senseless resistance. Clenched teeth, darkened face, burning gaze, everything spoke of Geyser's raging anger. At the same time, he continued to sit helplessly on the floor, feeling humiliated. Without showing the slightest sympathy, Edel reflected on the fact that the fight had barely begun and his opponent had already surrendered. Staring at Geyser's face, distorted with rage and unwilling to admit defeat, the young man involuntarily compared this situation to the cruel world of demons. There, such weakness of spirit was punished by immediate death. Clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white, leaving deep scratches on the ground, the guy finally admitted his defeat, which seemed to have come at the cost of incredible effort. Edel animatedly told the guy that he had finally admitted his defeat. The girls immediately ran up to the young man and began to tell him in turn that he had done a great job and had won an incredible victory. A group of people immediately crowded around Edel and, looking after the departing Geyser, said that he was defeated with such a weak sword and that they did not expect at all that he would stoop to such cheating. His confidant called out to him, his voice filled with concern and some fear. Geyser, leaving in a bad mood, rudely pushed the guy away and demanded that he not interfere with his passage. While the worried henchman and the angry Geyser ran out of the hall, Tina, on the contrary, watched their retreat with a satisfied smile. Gently grasping Edel's hand, Tina reminded him that their invitation to have tea was still valid, despite the late hour. The dark-haired girls spoke of their desire to get to know the young man better, while Tina, her eyes shining with delight, hugged his hand. After he freed his hand from the girls, he apologized and said that he would not be able to spend time with her today, as he had some business appointments. With a beaming smile, he advised them to have tea in Alice's company, which, to Alice's great surprise, left her blushing and in shock. The young man, having said at last that they would see each other later, left, and Alice and the girl remained standing in awkward silence, caused by the young man's unexpected departure and his strange proposal. Suddenly, a sharp, loud bang against the wall was heard in the student dormitory. Having vented his anger on the wall, breaking it with his fist, the guy had a hard time accepting the fact of his defeat. He was indignant that he had lost to some mere mortal, not understanding how such a thing could have happened. As Geyser examined the hole in the wall, he tried to find an explanation for what had happened. He repeated, like a mantra, that a normal sword could not split it, implying that there must be something else to what had happened, some hidden reason. The young man, overcome with anger, could not believe what had happened. He thought that Edel must have cheated and entered into a secret alliance with these two in order to humiliate him. It seemed to him the height of injustice. Clutching the sword tightly in his hand, the boy said with hatred that he did not intend to forgive what had happened. His words sounded like a sentence. Approaching the exit with the sword firmly clutched in his left hand, Geyser confidently declared that he would not leave the humiliation unpunished and would take revenge on the offender so that he would regret what he had done 10 times more. With undisguised anger mixed with disgust, he headed towards the door, which, according to him, belonged to Edel. Instead of a polite greeting, the guy decided to show his destructive nature and create complete chaos. He intended to start the acquaintance with disorder. Filled with anger, the nobleman slashed his sword at Edel's door, as if he wanted to destroy everything in his path. The door shattered into pieces, unable to withstand the furious attack. After entering the room, he turned towards the closet, carefully examining the room. Judging by his haughty tone, he considered the room beneath his dignity, so with poorly concealed disgust he reported that it was extremely uncomfortable here. After taking a few steps, Geyser suddenly found himself in the trap that Edel had set earlier. Apparently, Geyser was not prepared for such a turn of events. The guy's face expressed extreme surprise, since what he saw completely contradicted his expectations. Suddenly, right under the young man's feet, a black abyss opened up, as if the earth itself had decided to swallow him up, leaving only emptiness and darkness. Scared to death, the boy could do nothing when suddenly a void formed under his feet and he quickly fell down, deprived of any support. As he fell, the young man felt his body hit the hard ground with force. After a painful fall, the young man found himself sitting on the ground. He mechanically scratched the back of his head, as if trying to relieve the pain, and quietly stated the fact that it was very painful. The guy, stunned by what he saw, asked with confusion and alarm in his voice what the hell was going on. The guy didn't have time to come to his senses, as he fell into a trap and found himself locked in a cage. And somewhere off to the side, there was a sword lying next to him. The young man, feeling very confused, wondered how such a hole could have formed in this place, since he was absolutely sure that the existence of such a room was simply impossible. The young man grabbed the railing of the grate and pulled with all his might, trying to free himself, but to no avail. He kept saying that he couldn't get out, his voice full of despair. The guy was puzzled and could not understand what strange and frightening events were happening around him. Fear was clearly visible in his eyes, reflecting his inner confusion and anxiety. In the grate next to the geyser was a disgusting clot of slime. This mass was so unnatural and repulsive that it evoked a feeling of disgust and fear. The young man, taking the sword in his hands, expressed his surprise and indignation at the fact that they tried to scare him with the help of the vile slime. He declared that no one had the right to do this to him, and his voice was full of determination and anger. The young man swung his sword resolutely at the disgusting clot of slime, loudly ordering it to disappear. The boy swung his sword at the slime, but to his surprise, it reflected the attack, causing the blade to bounce back as if it had hit something hard and elastic. The guy jumped back and pulled his sword away from the unexpected reaction of the slime. The slime rebounded, and the young man, closely watching its behavior, expressed the opinion that it was elastic. The slime began to engulf the nobleman's sword, and he, who had not expected such behavior, asked in confusion what it was, his voice full of shock at the unexpected development. He stared at the slime, his eyes wide with fear. He asked what kind of slime it was, his voice shaking, betraying his inner unease and uncertainty. The slime began to absorb Geyser's sword, and he, not expecting such behavior, anxiously asked if it was really absorbing his blade. The boy, holding his left wrist in his hand, expressed confusion, asking how anyone could possibly understand what was happening. He was full of confusion and anxiety, his eyes wide open in misunderstanding of the situation. Suddenly, Geyser heard someone's voice, which told him that it was his pet, who had been with him all his life. The young man noticed a black silhouette behind the bars and, feeling anxious, asked loudly who it was. His voice was full of tension and anxiety. He tried to see the figure more clearly, but the shadow remained indistinguishable. Geyser noticed that the man who was in the room with him came into the light. Geyser saw Edel smiling before him and, expressing his surprise, asked him if it was really him. Then, with undisguised curiosity and anxiety, Geyser inquired about this room. Edel explained to Geyser that he had created this space himself. Geyser, summing up his observations, exclaimed in bewilderment, his voice full of bewilderment and shock. The young man gently stroked his pet through the bars, saying that it was a Gratoni slime, a popular pet in the demon world. His voice was full of tenderness and care as he spoke of his pet. The boy watched Edel pet the slime with caution and said that he had never heard of a pet called Gratoni before. His voice was full of confusion, his eyes carefully following Edel's every move. The young man carefully picked up his pet and noted with surprise that it was a pity that Geyser didn't know about them, since in the demon world these slimes are very popular and hardly even require eating. Geyser asked, with a mixture of envy and anger in his voice, if Edel was really in the demon world. His tone was full of tension and disbelief, his eyes narrowed with the emotions he was trying to contain. Edel, kneeling with his eyes closed, held out the stone and explained that his slime had absorbed so much adamantite that it could make his body incredibly hard. His voice was calm but confident, his movements slow and measured. When Edel said that his slime easily digested bones, Geyser was very surprised and felt a hint of fear. His eyes widened in surprise, and his voice trembled with anxiety. The young man lowered his head, and with determination in his voice, noted that it would be with a possible victim. His eyes were closed and his tone was firm and confident. Edel looked at Geyser with a determined look, his eyes shining with confidence, and he said that there would be no trace left of this sacrifice. Geyser was very frightened by Edel's words and, feeling that he was finished, asked if Edel would not be jailed for this. The young man's voice trembled with fear, his eyes were wide open in horror and cold sweat was running down his face. The young man quickly grabbed the bars with his hands and, shouting, called the guy names, asking if he really thought he was allowed to do anything. He was full of anger and indignation and his eyes were burning with rage. Edel looked at the boy menacingly and intimidatingly, listening attentively as he told him about his aristocratic origins. The aristocrat stepped back from the boy, feeling fear, while he, with a confident and calm tone, said that, as his grandfather used to say. Edel said his grandfather said that the enemy should not be released, no matter what. The young man carefully opened the metal grate. Edel, moving towards Geyser with a clear threat in every movement, confidently said that by letting go he would risk his retribution. His voice was cold and mysterious, and each word sounded like a phrase of absolute truth. Geyser backed away in fear, not understanding what was happening here. The young man slowly extended his hand towards the geyser, and at that moment, the boy suddenly screamed in fear. The next day after this strange incident, the auditorium is filled with a constant hum of conversation from other students in the course. All the students looked tensely at the desk behind them. Alice, addressing everyone present, asked why they were looking at their desks so strangely. Her voice was calm, but her eyes showed a sincere desire to understand the reason for their behavior. There was an excited guy sitting next to Edel, and everyone tensely asked who this guy was. The cheerful young man waved energetically in their direction and announced with a smile that it was he, Geyser, and wished everyone a good morning. His movements were lively and full of energy. Noticing Tina, Geyser wished her a good morning with a smile, but Tina was frightened by his friendliness. Her body tensed up, as she did not expect such a friendly greeting from him. The guy bowed to the girl and said that he wanted to apologize for his past behavior, and the girl was shocked by Geyser's new image. She couldn't believe that the Geyser she knew before could change so much and show such sincere remorse. Alice asked Edel what had happened to Geyser to make him so friendly, noting that he was a completely different person. Her voice was full of surprise, and her gaze was full of curiosity. Geyser told Tina that his grandfather once said that if you want to defeat your opponent, you need to tame him. Scratching the back of his head, he added sheepishly that he hoped for her friendship with him. However, Tina was most struck by the word tame. The boy enthusiastically told that he had survived only thanks to his brother, and now he was obliged to him for the rest of his days. The young man was full of gratitude and determination. He seemed to glow with sincerity and devotion. Alice noted with indifference that it looked scary. Her voice was calm and even, without any emotion. Geyser was friendly and sociable with everyone. He moved from one student to another, trying to support each topic of conversation. His demeanor was energetic and attentive, as if he were trying to create an atmosphere of openness and participation. Alice asked Edel what he did to Geyser because his behavior frightened her. Her gaze followed the boy closely, waiting for an answer. Edel replied that he hadn't done anything special to Geyser, he had simply instilled discipline in him. He was calm and confident, as if he wanted to emphasize that everything had happened naturally. Alice exclaimed, noticing that discipline was usually understood to mean something else. The girl's voice was full of disbelief. All this time, Madame Chartier stood at the door of the auditorium and listened to their conversation. She was focused and attentive, trying not to miss a single word. With an embarrassed smile, she admitted that this was how he made her behave like a dog. The lady's voice was full of a mixture of shame and irony, expressing the awkwardness of the memories. When the bell rang, marking the end of the lesson, someone said with relief that it was finally over. Edel was asked what club he planned to join. Edel thought for a moment, asking about the club. Geyser explained that these were extracurricular activities organized by the students on their own initiative, and suggested that they go and see them right now. The young man confidently declared that he would soon become the best swordsman in the club, but Alice and Edel ignored his words. Instead, Edel asked the girl what clubs existed. The young man counted off several well-known clubs on his fingers: martial arts, dueling, art club, and shooting. His gestures were precise, as if he wanted to emphasize the importance of each one. When he asked Alice if she was a member of any of these clubs, the young man was met with a contemptuous reaction from her, as if the question was intended to somehow accuse her. Alice replied that she was not a member of any of these clubs yet. To this, the young man suggested going there together, noting that this could be a good opportunity for her to make new friends. The girl, clearly clasping her hands awkwardly, muttered that he had no right to ask about this, since yesterday he ran away from her, leaving her with Tina. Remembering yesterday and how she waved her hands, Alice said that she didn't want to talk to anyone at all. Watching her with surprise, Edel listened to her words. She was not able to build friendship the way he did, and this embarrassed her. Alice frowned and stared at him, while he asked with slight sarcasm if she seriously thought they were his friends. He called the relationship friendly, and Alice suddenly realized how awkward she felt, as if he had seen something she herself did not want to admit. The guy's words hung in the air, filled with awkwardness, and the girl, unable to resist the growing embarrassment, said that she agreed to go with him. A group of teenagers walked briskly towards the spacious building where all the clubs gathered. Geyser told Edel, calling him brother, to keep up and follow him. Approaching the building, the guy said that this was the building where various clubs were located. Upon entering the building, one of the guys, full of enthusiasm, asked Edel if he was interested in any of the club's activities. Edel, as the others noticed, thought for a moment, trying to come up with an answer. The young man assured that he knew what a dueling club was, implying that he also knew the details of its work. The boy, confident in his words, explained that the essence of duels is to compete until one of the participants runs out of life force. To this, Alice objected that students do not engage in destroying each other. Extending his hand towards the club, Geyser suggested not to put the matter off for too long and to go and see everything with his own eyes, saying that he would show him all the interesting places nearby. The young man opened the door noisily and apologized for interrupting his lesson. The guy announced that his bro had just transferred and was eager to join the club. The man frowned and looked at him suspiciously and asked again, as if he doubted what he had heard. Edel's face was filled with genuine amazement, as if he had turned to stone, looking at the club that had surpassed all his expectations. The students looked around the club, and the man from the club explained that this was a place where they practice martial arts, without using weapons or magic, but only with their bodies. Edel, thinking about the man's words, noted that the idea of martial arts, devoid of external support in the form of weapons or magic, seemed quite attractive to him. The young man felt a shadow hanging over him, and, raising his head, saw a muscular man who, with some surprise, stated that in front of him was probably the same new student who had been talked about so much lately. The jock's disdainful gaze slid over Edel's figure, not lingering on anything. He mockingly called the guy a weakling. The young man threw his head back and stared at the face of the muscular man who towered over him and said something unintelligible about a period of 1 year. The muscular man, not hiding his sarcasm, continued, saying that at least a year of hard training would definitely not hurt the young man to even remotely approach his impressive physique. Cracking his fingers in the bandages that were wrapped around his hands, the man noticed that since the young man had already made up his mind. The sly expression frozen on his face betrayed the insincerity when he said that he was ready to accept him with open arms, like a predator luring its prey. Edel gave the man a crushing blow, sending him flying into the wall like a cannonball, making a huge hole in it. The young man knocked Mr. Bulk down with one push, causing everyone to be surprised. The other members of the club immediately ran up to the fallen man, asking worriedly if he was hurt. After shaking himself off, Edel declared that he had done everything to avoid taking the life of his opponent, which came as a complete surprise to Alice and Geyser, who watched in amazement. After a short pause, Geyser, wanting to defuse the situation, decided to change the subject and suggested that they all continue on their way. When Edel came to the art club, he seemed to breathe life into the canvas, creating a painting that took the viewer's breath away. And in the football club, the young man demonstrated his outstanding abilities. He deftly bypassed the defenders and, with a precise shot, sent the ball into the net, scoring the winning goal. The track and field club was another place where the boy could prove himself. His speed amazed everyone. He easily overtook his rivals and finished first by a large margin, proving that he has an extraordinary running talent. After success in other areas, the Magic Club became another peak he conquered, proving his versatility and incredible abilities. The young man was not allowed to stay there for long and was pushed out of the club. The guy, literally bursting into tears, asked Edel to leave the club. The boy asked desperately that he had been kicked out because he had broken their target. The young man disagreed, clarifying that the problem was not the incident but rather Edel's negative impact on the morale of the club members. Alice, sighing heavily, said that she knew from the very beginning that this is how it would all end. Scratching the back of his head, the young man noted that club activities were quite complicated. Calling out to the boys, the girl asked if they were looking for a club, perhaps offering her help or information. The girl introduced herself, saying that it was nice to meet you, and added that she was the head of the club. She called herself Cyrena and said that she was a fourth-year student. Cyrena admitted that she was just passing by, but their distinctive appearance caught her attention. With a sly face, the girl said that, apparently, the usual activities at the club did not suit them. Extending her hand, Cyrena assured them that they would not be left indifferent by their joint work, since the feeling of satisfaction from the results achieved would inspire them. When asked about her interest in such a club, Cyrena only giggled in response. Holding out her hand and showing the map, the girl said that this was exactly what they were looking for, the Dungeon Exploration Club. Looking at the map, the guys repeated the name of the club with interest in their voices. The company was extremely intrigued by the proposal, thinking that it could be something like quests. The girl is telling something to the young man. A nice person walking behind them is also listening attentively. The sign reads, Dungeon Explorers. Two people are talking next to it. They wonder if this dungeon will be better than the last one. A figure in shorts and a shirt runs into the room and cheerfully greets the people talking. Three characters are standing. One of them seems thoughtful or focused, looking away. The girl who entered the door earlier addresses the Dungeon Explorers. The heroine reports that she brought a new student for a visit. She stands among ancient stone buildings, a warm smile on her face and her arms outstretched. With enthusiasm and inspiration, she tells those present about the many hidden dungeons. The girl, confident and energetic, tells the boy that they are going to conquer something solely by their own efforts. The young man listens to her attentively. She abruptly takes his hand and really wants to tell him about the details of their organization. He, watching the heroine with an astonished look, thinks that her persistence seems excessive to him. Peeking out from around the corner, the young man notices a mysterious figure. It was a girl whose mystery attracted his attention. His guide is surprised by the young man's behavior. She did not expect that he would be able to sense the presence of anyone in this room. The man standing next to him stands in confusion. He does not sense the unfamiliar presence. Looking more closely, he notices the same elusive figure. Their gaze is slowly turned towards the mysterious figure. The silhouette of a woman appears before them, a mysterious image, shrouded in a fog of secrets and uncertainty. Her face was hidden by a mask, like a curtain. She seemed confused, and, in an uncertain voice, she said the words that she herself was in a state of secrecy. Frightened, she suddenly let out a sigh, and the black-haired youth standing next to her quietly stated that he had felt her presence the whole time. He says he felt her presence from the moment he walked into the room, during the meal, at the other club, every moment he was here. With bewilderment and slight wariness, he asks her if she is following him. In response, there was a frightened denial, as if she was afraid to open up. Some time passed, and with a guilty expression, she looked around at those present and asked for their forgiveness. She then introduced herself, saying that her name was Woot Lin and that she was a shinobi from the east. She explains her strange behavior by the fact that she received information that the school principal allegedly has a fifth grandson. Covering her face shyly with her hand, she explains that this is why she is so persistent in trying to find out the identity of the new student, to understand who is hiding behind this young face. The fair-haired young man standing nearby notes with bewilderment that the girl is making excuses and everything she does seems strange to him. There is a bright glint of worry in her eyes. She is sweating profusely from anxiety, as if her heart is beating too fast. Thoughts are spinning inside her that silence will only make the situation worse. A dark-haired young man, who was watching what was happening, addresses his colleague with gentle criticism. He believes that he is putting pressure on this girl in vain, because she has no evil intentions. His mysterious gaze was directed at the girl, and he said that if they had intended to harm him, he would have dealt with her long ago. At this point, the girl who brought everyone here takes the initiative and asks everyone to calm down. Her voice becomes firm and confident. She calmly places her hand on the table, urging them to listen to her carefully. She points to the map laid out in front of them and states that their next task is to go on a reconnaissance mission into a dungeon located near the city. Then he asks if the boys want to join in. The answer is yes. Two of them are determined to do it together. But there is one among them, a girl who looks scared. The cute girl with a bow in her hair, feeling anxious, tried to abandon the mission. The dark-haired young man couldn't resist and, with a slight smile, teased the girl, emphasizing her nervousness. This irritated her. However, despite everything, the girl, gathering all her will and determination, finally agreed to go on a dangerous journey. The outlines of the ancient building with its domed roof softly stand out against the cloudy sky, creating a special atmosphere of mystery and anticipation. At 7 a.m., the team members gathered to conquer the thousand-year ruins. The head of the team began her story about this object. Conquering it is not as easy as it seems. It turned out that the team had already conquered this place, but this time the commander decided to do it all over again. She pointed her finger at the map and suggested going to the middle level. Looking back at the boys, she said with a smile that the structure of the dungeon was constantly changing, so her suggestion was appropriate. The most serious young man asked in surprise if the structure changed every time the team members entered the dungeon. In response, he received a chuckle and a negative answer. This answer made him think. It turned out that the dungeons of the human and demon worlds were different. The commander interrupted his thoughts and said that she would divide the 23 participants into teams of 4 people. The squad leader slowly and decisively began to distribute roles, like a director dividing the participants into fateful destinies. A young man with blonde hair named Geyser was appointed as a swordmaster, a brave man ready to strike the enemy with the sharpest blade. A shy girl with a cute bow on her head named Lou Alice chose the path of magic, offensive and furious, like lightning tearing apart the darkness. The masked girl, the mysterious Lin, has taken on the role of cover, hiding in the shadows like a ghost, unnoticed and dangerous to the enemy. The commander looked at the black-haired Edel and thought, as if in the depths of her mind there were secrets that had yet to be revealed. He, looking at her with bewilderment, as if he could not comprehend her thoughts, continued to examine her, and in his gaze one could read a mixture of curiosity and bewilderment. She, lost in thought, explained her thoughtfulness by the fact that she did not yet know all of the young man's strengths, and therefore decided to entrust him only with support, quiet but important. Suddenly, eerie, disturbing sounds began to sound in the dungeon, as if someone or something was awakening, ready to enter the stage of this darkness. The team members stood in tense silence, as if frozen in the face of the unknown, waiting for the appearance of a terrible monster that could suddenly flare up from the darkness. The commander, turning to Lin, asked if she sensed the presence of something sinister hidden in the darkness. The shinobi folded her fingers, demonstrating some ancient technique. It was as if she had scanned the entire dungeon. After this, the girl said that she didn't feel anything suspicious yet. Edel instantly appeared behind her, calm and confident, like a shadow, ready to intervene at any moment, asking if her words were true, because he felt something different. She felt scared when she felt his gaze on her. He pointed his finger at the stairs in bewilderment, and said that the monster was already approaching. Lin glanced at Edel's back with anger and displeasure, as if accusing him of something. In the blink of an eye, the team heard the thunder of hooves, a sound that foretells the approach of the inevitable, causing hearts to beat faster. There was a deafening roar that broke the silence, and at that moment, a minotaur emerged from the darkness, right from the place the young man had pointed to. The entire team was in shock, as if they were frozen in the face of such a terrifying and powerful force. Looking at Edel, the commander realized that he was not just a boy, but a man with hidden potential, and she thought for a moment, trying to understand his true nature. Having recovered from the shock, she, full of determination, realized that it was time to act and decided that she would cope with this monster alone. Rushing forward with confidence and determination, she headed towards the Minotaur. With a smile on her face and putting in all her strength, she managed to defeat the dangerous monster. After the victory, feeling joy and relief, the commander went down to her comrades, not noticing how a trap was hidden in the wall. But the young man noticed this and warned the team. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and Edel, in turn, received well-deserved praise. He then reached out to the brick that was not to be touched and recklessly pressed on it, which immediately sent the team into a state of panic and fear. A huge ball rolled towards them. Everyone ran for cover. One young man stood like a statue and looked at the approaching huge boulder. Edel, looking with interest and attention, stopped the moving stone with his hand, as if he possessed a powerful force. This decisive action literally stunned the head of the detachment. Her shocked face reflected surprise and bewilderment at the display of strength of her comrade. Suddenly, as if by magic, Edel shattered the stone into dust with a flick of his wrist, his gesture quick and precise, as if he had mastered magic. Only a moment passed, and the fragments disappeared as if they had never been there, and the rest of the team, hiding in cover, watched this miraculous display of power. The young man, with a sweet and kind smile, pointed his finger at something important, attracting the attention of his comrades, as if he was showing them a secret hidden from prying eyes. It turned out that a secret passage had opened up in front of them, a narrow, hidden hole. Edel, as if enchanted, looked there, into the depths of this passage, his eyes shining with curiosity, as if he saw something secret and important. The frightened Geyser and his comrades warned him not to enter this passage, because there could be danger lurking there for uninvited guests. Soon the boys noticed an ancient chest, and, naturally, Geyser thought that it contained treasures, wealth that was worth opening at any cost. Edel, hearing this, warned him not to rush, because a mimic might be hiding in the chest. Geyser, not sharing the fears, asked his comrade what a mimic is and why people are so afraid of it. Suddenly, as if from underground, the chest with its tongue sticking out rushed at the hero, and he, seized with horror, screamed in fear. He screamed, and at that moment the chest, missing, crashed into the wall, leaving behind only the echoes of its furious attack. Meanwhile, the commander, observing what was happening, suspected that something was wrong here. It occurred to her that perhaps Edel had pushed the box from behind with his fist, either to set a trap for them or to check what was inside. She looked closely at the boys, especially at the new guy. His behavior seemed suspicious to her, as if he was hiding something or knew more than he was saying. Having come to his senses, the fair-haired youth stated that in his opinion there was nothing valuable or interesting in this passage, and perhaps it was just a trap. But the dark-haired guy, confident in himself and his knowledge, said that this was just a clever trick, and in fact this passage was very important for their mission. He spread his arms and looked at his comrades with enthusiasm, as if he possessed knowledge beyond their understanding and knew what lay ahead. The team members, gripped with fear, were very afraid that this madman would press some trap again, not suspecting what it could lead to. And as predicted, his hand reached for the bricks again, causing alarm and fear in everyone, because one wrong move could lead to trouble. At that moment, the wall began to collapse, and the boys realized that imminent danger awaited them. They began to fall and dodged the debris, trying to save themselves. After this, the young man told his commander that she would no longer be able to return back. He looked at her mysteriously and saw that she was standing there in bewilderment, not understanding why she couldn't go back. An explanation came from his lips. It was a one-way wall. The commander was horrified. Hearing this remark, the whole team was shocked. Could it really be that they couldn't go back? Edel stares straight ahead, his eyes fascinated and calm, as if he is seeing something extraordinary. Behind him, the squad members are frozen in horror, their faces filled with anxiety and hopelessness. The commander, feeling the walls as if trying to find at least some hidden path, understands that it will really be impossible to get out of here. Only one thought flashed through her head: how could they get out of this hopeless situation, and how could they find a way to salvation? Suddenly, she turned sharply towards Edel and, breaking into a scream, addressed him, because she was outraged by his calmness, his composure at this critical moment. There was anger and alarm in her voice. The young man answered her quietly and calmly that he had seen something similar in the demon world, which caused the commander immediate shock. After all, such words seemed incredible to her. Her heart began to beat faster. She couldn't believe her ears. After all, they were talking about a place where you can only get to if you have a certain power, and he seemed to have seen it with his own eyes. Moving a little further, the team saw a staircase leading down. They did not think that this could be the shortest route to the lower level of the dungeon. The squad leader realized that in order to get out of here, they would have to defeat a strong enemy on the lower level and then use the automatic transfer, the hope of salvation. At that moment, a shinobi spoke to her, noting that they were very few in number. The commander agreed, noting that they only had enough supplies for 2 days and 1 night, making their task much more difficult. In a fit of irritation, she turned sharply to Edel and asked with displeasure where he had put his luggage. The young man extended his hand into the portal that suddenly appeared. As if by magic, he pulled out his backpack from an invisible portal. This caused a quiet horror among his comrades. Lin, noticing this, assessed what was happening and said that this was a manifestation of super complex magic that surpassed ordinary knowledge and skills. Alice, on the contrary, was not surprised and calmly asked if this portal could take them back home, to their world, to a safe life. Later she confirmed that she had become accustomed to this and that it had become a completely ordinary occurrence for her. Edel explained that moving through such portals is very dangerous because he himself faced serious problems. Sometimes he could not get out of them or was transported to unexpected places. He said that he once accidentally found himself in the body of a demon, which became a real test and lesson for him. Deciding to continue on their way, the team set off further, hoping to find a way out or new clues leading to salvation. 3 hours of intense movement brought them to a mysterious door. Lin, smelling the scent that was floating around, stopped and concentrated. Her instinct told her that danger was hidden in every look, in every rustle. Geyser, noticing her ability to disappear, could not resist and said admiringly that if he had such a thing, he would spy on girls. The female members of the team immediately condemned him, throwing displeased glances and expressing their disapproval. They understood that such words were inappropriate in such a situation. Meanwhile, Edel, driven by curiosity and determination, decided to go to the door and check it out closer. He stepped forward, intending to open it or at least understand what was hidden behind it. However, the commander, sensing danger, stopped him abruptly. She firmly said that he could not go there alone. Her voice was stern but caring. The young man turned around and, with a confident expression, replied that he could handle it alone. His eyes were shining with determination, and his voice was filled with faith in his own strength. Enthusiastically, he raised his head and said with a slight smile that they would easily climb up there. The team, listening to him, was surprised. Such bold words had never been heard from this young man before. But suddenly, behind them, a shadow appeared, a huge, ominous figure. It was a manticore, a monster that made you shudder with its terrible appearance. The monster had huge claws, like those of a crab, and its body was covered in fur. The monster seemed almost invulnerable, its eyes sparkled with malice, and its growling cries echoed throughout the space. The commander, calm and confident, spoke with restraint but determination, telling the boys to be very careful. Her voice sounded like a command, a call for caution in this deadly fight. Alice slowly began to lean forward, her legs seemed to give way, and she began to fall lifelessly to the ground, as if an invisible weight was squeezing her body, and every moment it became heavier. Soon, all the team members were on the floor. The commander quietly suggested that the poison that was spreading throughout the room could be the cause. Within the group, it was noticed that Lin remained above, at a safe height, and seemed to be in no danger, as if she had somehow miraculously escaped the effects of the poison. The girl's head was filled with only one thought: how can she defeat the enemy alone, when the forces seem too unequal and the enemy is too huge and scary for her? She wonders where Edel has gone. And the young man stands nearby, his face expressing complete bewilderment. He does not understand why everyone around him is lying down. A smile slowly appears on the young man's face. His eyes sparkle with a slight mockery, and he quietly says that it is not poison at all, as if confirming his special fortitude. The commander, lying on the floor, unable to understand what is happening around her, hears the words of Edel, who offers to prick himself with a needle to prove that it is not poison, but something else that hides the true nature of their condition. Slowly and calmly, he takes a thin needle in his hand, lifts it up and, as if ready for an experiment, swings it to pierce his skin, demonstrating confidence in his words. At that moment, noticing his intention, the commander screamed, trying to stop the madman. Because his actions seemed dangerous and reckless to her, he looked like someone who was losing control of himself. His gaze, filled with calm determination, turns softly to the leader of the squad, and he quietly says that he trained for a long time to learn how to break down the poison, as if it were the key to their salvation. The commander watched the situation with horror. She said that she could neutralize the poison with magic. She asked for trust and assured that she could help by developing resistance. Calm and confidence enveloped Edel as he quietly said that he agreed to the proposal, but he began to cast his own spell. And as if by magic, the poison began to disappear, as if an invisible stream of magic was dissolving its influence. The team, dumbfounded by what was happening, could not contain their surprise and relief. The cheerful, black-haired young man smiled, confidently declaring that he would always be fine, despite the surrounding atmosphere. His words sounded so calm and confident, as if he could not be afraid of anything in the world. Meanwhile, from above, Lin was watching the monster closely, her eyes ready to pounce at any moment to finish off this horrific creature. Suddenly, there was a very sharp, deafening sound. This was Lin jumping on the monster and, with a katana in her hand, trying to cut off its claws. Her movement was fast and decisive, as if she was rushing into battle without hesitation. However, she quickly realized that cutting off all of the monster's tails was an extremely difficult task. The monster's heavy and strong body did not allow her to easily cope with this, and each of her movements required enormous effort. A thought entered her head. As long as the monster didn't pay attention to her, she could wait for the right moment. She just had to be patient and wait to implement her plan at the most opportune moment. Suddenly, a deafening sound was heard. It was the monster turning. A booming echo spread throughout the entire space, marking the beginning of the decisive attack. But it turned out that the monster was not as stupid as it seemed. He had calculated Lin's actions and prepared for her attempts, as if he had foreseen her next move, which made him a dangerous and cunning opponent. At that moment, a figure appeared in front of Lin as if from thin air. It blocked her path with its body, like an invisible shield, ready to protect her from any danger. This silhouette looked very similar to Edel. He deftly caught the needles flying towards Lin with his hands, as if it was the most natural thing to do. Then, with a soft but confident voice, he asked if she was okay, showing his care and attention. She was unharmed, and in complete shock she found it hard to believe that he had managed to catch the needles with his bare hands. It seemed incredible and incredibly brave to her, which left a strong impression on her. Edel said that it was his turn to fight, and, without wasting any time, he immediately ran towards the monster, ready to continue the fight. His eyes were full of determination and confidence. He grabbed the monster by the claw, showing extraordinary determination. In response, the monster howled in rage and surprise, not expecting such a bold attack. At that moment, the monster seemed to freeze, watching the young man who, holding its claw, looked straight into its eyes. It was a manifestation of its strength and determination, a moment when everything could be decided. Suddenly, the monster's face changed color dramatically. Its expression became distorted, as if it was experiencing severe pain or an unexpected shock. Edel thought about it and suggested that the creature was being affected by its own poison, an idea that seemed very interesting to him. However, his thoughts were interrupted by the crew members who enthusiastically approached him, expressing their gratitude for saving him. They could not hide their admiration and appreciation for his heroic act. Lin and the squad leader were still reeling from what had happened. Their shock was obvious. They couldn't believe that one person could defeat such a boss with such strength and determination. The team walked forward, feeling a slight sense of unease and a familiar atmosphere as they entered a room that was almost an exact copy of the previous one. Everything around them seemed strangely repetitive, as if they were stuck in time. Edel thoughtfully assumed that they would have more than one battle ahead of them, but a whole series of fights with strong enemies. After all, this was an arena for testing their strength and agility. The commander, with a strict movement squeezing the handle of the weapon, gave a short, clear order to prepare for battle. Everyone immediately tensed up, ready for the coming battle. The tension hung in the air. Suddenly, strange vibrations surrounded them, felt throughout their entire bodies. A chill ran down their spines. Their hearts began to beat faster. Fear gripped them, except for Edel, whose gaze remained calm and confident. A moment later, a new boss burst out of the darkness, even more bulky, like a frozen stone giant, shining with the cold shine of rocks and stone. His appearance inspired awe and respect. The team immediately realized that they were facing an unusual golem, not just an enemy, but a living creation, every facet of which concealed a threat and a challenge. Particular attention was drawn to the golem's hand, which looked strange and menacing. It became clear that this monster could deliver a long-range attack, which made the fight even more dangerous and unpredictable. The commander felt responsible for the lives of her comrades, so she firmly declared that fighting an unknown enemy was reckless. It was necessary to carefully consider every step. Edel, standing nearby, did not share the concerns and confidently stated that danger could not be avoided and that there was no point in being afraid. The battle had to be accepted, otherwise victory could not be achieved. With a slight smile on his face, he turned to his companions, offering to learn how to fight a demon that none of them had ever seen before. In response, he heard a lively interest and the question, in what way? At that moment, the commander thought about how in this cruel world, full of monsters and dangers, it is impossible to know everything about each enemy and predict their every move. Memories took her back to her years at the school for heroes, when they were only taught to fight demons described in ancient books, not those that appeared without warning or rules. Her thought was simple and wise. If someone possesses knowledge of how to defeat monsters, he is obliged to generously share it with others in order to protect the world from unknown dangers together. Suddenly, Edel rushed forward, like a flash of rage and courage, jumping straight at the monster, leaving no time to think. The golem's face was literally before his eyes. With one powerful blow of his fist, he unleashed all his power on the golem, and the enemy's stone-protective body cracked like a fragile vase. It was a real miracle that captivated the entire team. The team members stood there in complete amazement, barely holding their breath, their mouths hanging open in disbelief at how this young man could take down a huge golem with just one blow. Joyful and inspired, Edel declared that it was necessary to look for the moment to attack before the monster made the first move. It was precisely this strategy that significantly increased the chances of winning. Geyser, watching the bold actions of his comrade, froze with his eyes wide open and his mouth open. His emotions were a mixture of fear and admiration for such determination. Even the commander, who had survived many battles, could not hide her shock. She stood motionless, like a stone statue, silently looking at her charge with genuine amazement. Edel continued his story, describing in detail the various monsters he had already fought in his travels and battles. He explained how one could quickly and effectively defeat these creatures without wasting extra strength and energy, imagining how one after another they would fall under his blows. In the conversation, he touched on different categories of monsters, for example, those who can fly and use aerial attacks, which requires special tactics. Edel also mentioned demons that have amazing stealth and can appear suddenly, catching even the most experienced warriors off guard. He told all this with such enthusiasm and liveliness that it seemed as if overcoming any monster was a trifle accessible to everyone. Then he turned and walked forward, and the team stood there, mesmerized, watching him with admiration. Suddenly, one of them asked, "Who will be the next boss?" Edel didn't turn around, continuing to walk forward confidently, and a light, kind smile played on his lips, as if he knew something important that remained a secret to the others. The commander glanced at his back and thought with alarm, how many more tests would they have to go through, since there were still 6 whole floors of this dungeon ahead? Suddenly, there was a loud roar, and the commander was overcome with fear. Together with Lin, they turned around. A new monster appeared in front of them, ready for a mortal fight. The leader of the squad shouted loudly, warning everyone that the last boss of this dungeon would be the Bloody Minotaur, a real horror that they would have to fight. Edel, arms folded across his chest and expressing displeasure, asked contemptuously if this monster was really the last one in their trials. Everything was happening faster than he expected. The commander did not immediately understand what he meant. The Bloody Minotaur was truly terrifying. Thick steam poured from his nostrils, and his gaze sparkled with wildness and unyielding fury. The thunderous roar of this monster was so terrible that any enemy who heard it would run away in fear. It took a great deal of strength of mind and body to stand up to this creature. Teams usually changed their lineups to deal with it. The commander understood that for a young team of several people, this battle would be a huge test, and for one hero, it would be a completely impossible task. So she decided that at the most opportune moment, when Edel was in trouble, she would unexpectedly come to his aid to change the course of the battle. Suddenly, the Minotaur rushed towards the team, his movements lightning fast and threatening. The commander immediately noticed this and shouted a warning to everyone present that a huge monster was approaching. Her voice cut through the air with alarm. Edel stood motionless, unblinking, staring into the eyes of the approaching enemy, as if welcoming the inevitable battle. Suddenly, he grabbed one of the Minotaur's horns with a strong hand, not allowing the monster to move. In a calm voice, he asked the monster what was irritating him, as if he was confident in his strength and incapable of feeling fear. The commander screamed in despair, seeing something alarming in the Minotaur's behavior. It was a very bad sign. The Minotaur opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar, as if he was going to tear the young man to pieces. The crew covered their ears with their hands, experiencing unbearable pain from the sound. A frightening thought flashed through the commander's mind: if Edel were to be hit at such a close range, it could be fatal for him. Suddenly, Edel soared into the air, pushing off from the wall, and, as if hovering, rushed swiftly at the Minotaur, preparing to deliver the decisive blow. In a cold and confident voice, he said that it was time to end this, without taking his eyes off the huge creature, as if challenging it to a final battle. Suddenly, an unimaginable stream of magic burst from the palm of the young man's hand, sparkling and pulsating with power, which rushed straight towards the Minotaur, filling the air with incredible energy. The sight was simply fantastic. The squad leader and Win watched in silence, amazed by what they saw. After a short pause, the commander quietly said that it usually took a dozen fighters to defeat such a boss. The team noticed a mysterious chest in front of them, and immediately questions began to sound. What could be hidden inside? Perhaps these were the long-awaited rewards for their heroic deeds. Geyser, still shaken by the fear from his previous encounter with the mimic, suggested that this chest might be another trap, some kind of dirty trick by a similar monster. The commander, with a firm and confident look, reassured the team, saying that there was no need to panic. In her years of experience, she had never encountered a situation where rewards were accompanied by dangers or traps. Edel, listening to the conversation with surprise, noted that he had indeed encountered similar chests with awards, and although the commander did not immediately understand him, he tried to explain in more detail. He said that one day, when he opened a treasure chest, he suddenly felt the floor beneath him disappear, and he found himself in a different dungeon, completely different from the one they had been in before. Touching the chest, Edel carefully opened it and said with a slight smile that everything would be fine, there was no danger here. From inside, he took out a mysterious cube that emitted a bright, almost blinding glow. Taking it in his hand, the young man began to study the mysterious artifact intently. At that moment, the squad leader realized that in front of them was indeed a box with rare items, and admitted to herself that she had never had such a valuable artifact before. Lin, standing behind the captain, quietly noted that the team had made great progress in exploring new, uncharted areas of the dungeon. A drop of sweat rolled down the commander's cheek. She could not agree with this thought, because the hardships and risks were enormous. Edel, holding the cube in his hands and looking mysteriously at the commander, said that all the awards they earned in this adventure formerly belonged to the department, but this time, the entire victory rested entirely on the shoulders of the characters. A thought flashed through the shinobi's mind: the treasure, without a doubt, should belong to them, the heroes who had gone through all the trials. With a kind smile, Edel handed the cube to his comrades, asking if they wanted to take the artifact for themselves. However, they, overcome with fear, timidly refused. Then he decided to keep the cube for himself, and promised to keep it in his subspace, where artifacts and treasures are reliably protected. He was asked a question: since subspace is not infinite, how big is its limit? This made the young man think. It turned out that its subspace was comparable in size to an entire capital, which made it a truly colossal storage facility. The commander's hand unconsciously reached for the cube, and she asked if Edel was sure of his decision. He firmly answered that he was. Geyser, with a mad gleam in his eyes, offered to take the cube for himself, but received a stern refusal from the commander. The young man pointed out to his comrades a magic circle emerging on the floor, explaining that it was a circle of transference, the key to returning home. Stepping onto the circle, he confidently said that they would now be able to return back, completing their dangerous journey. As soon as all members of the squad entered the magic circle, they instantly found themselves free, where the rest of their allies, hiding behind the wall, were already waiting for them. They were incredibly happy to see their commander alive and well. Emotions were overflowing. The commander smiled as she looked at her comrades, who said that they had tried to contact them but to no avail. She sincerely apologized to them and warned that her story would be difficult to understand, too unusual and unbelievable. The characters' eyes widened, silently listening as the commander spoke of defeating the boss and saving them with the help of the magic circle of transference. Naturally, many of them did not believe her words, considering the story an incredible fiction. Geyser could not stand it and began to passionately prove the truth of the story, shouting that everything really happened and that his friend single-handedly defeated the Minotaur. Hearing the ridicule of his colleagues, he became angry and did not hide his resentment at such an attitude. At this time, the leader of the squad and the shinobi watched what was happening and were not surprised by the conflict. They understood that it was difficult to believe in it. The girl remembered how Edel dealt with the monster with one hand, and it seemed to her that it was some kind of bad dream. However, in her hands she still held the mysterious cube, irrefutable proof that everything that happened was real. She sighed heavily and admitted that this expedition presented them with more and more challenges. It was an unusual and difficult mission. The squad moved on, and Edel suddenly asked when the next mission would be. This surprised the commander. Unlike the others, he looked calm, as if such dangers were routine for him. She asked him if he was going to join the club, to which he replied that he was only thinking about it for now, that these were just plans for now. The commander suddenly said that perhaps he shouldn't join their community. With her gesture, she seemed to show that there was no place for him among them, too much separated them, and he did not quite fit in. As if avoiding his gaze, she added that she was sorry and sympathized with him because of the club's refusal to accept him. Several days passed. The two friends came out of a building, and the young man bitterly reported that Edel had been refused again. He was not even allowed to observe the club's activities. Geyser winked and added that someone was even spreading rumors that they were vandalizing. Meanwhile, several members of the club looked depressed. After the brutal defeat, they can no longer go about their business in peace. Geyser assumed that his friend was to blame for everything, looking at him disapprovingly, not understanding what was happening. Apparently, Edel decided not to rush into choosing a club and give himself time to think. Meanwhile, Alice, in a heated conversation with her grandmother, demanded to know who the mysterious young man really was. She insisted on detailed and clear answers. Grandmother sighed heavily and remained silent, as if she was afraid to reveal some secret. Finally, the ice was broken, and she began her story about the great sage Ramirez, who was the mentor of 4 heroes, including the grandmother herself. Alice, as it turned out, knew about him. The grandmother revealed that it was Ramirez who raised this young man in the demon world. This news struck the girl to the depths of her soul. She concluded that if the boy had studied under a powerful ruler of the demon world, his strength must indeed be extraordinary. Alice, delighted, realized that everything that was said was true, and she was filled with a feeling of admiration. In a conversation with her grandmother, Alice realized that it was worth making friends with Edel. He could teach her a lot. Grandmother nodded affirmatively, agreeing with this. The girl promised to try to get closer to Edel and not miss this chance to grow. There was determination and slight anxiety in her eyes. Everything seemed like an upcoming important test. Grandma offered Alice some tea. There were new varieties in the house that were worth trying. But Alice sternly refused. The lessons did not tolerate distractions. Her voice sounded firm and restrained. The understanding woman with a gentle smile said that she understood why the girl had a hard time with people, but she believed that Edel could be the bridge to a new relationship. Alice, lost in her thoughts, looked sad. A quiet struggle was going on in her soul. Grandmother thought about how to help her granddaughter through her new friend, the black-haired young man. In another room, the group listened to a lesson from a teacher who said that the students must clearly know their magical talents. Otherwise, long explanations will become torture for them, and progress will be slowed down. She explained that there are 4 main elements, and it is important to understand in which area each person has prospects. Deciding on a direction is not an easy task, but it is necessary. Geyser listened thoughtfully, thinking about how some students might want to learn more than just magical knowledge. The new perspective on possibilities made him curious and a little anxious. The teacher continued, saying that even a little skill in magic expands the possibilities of choice. She simultaneously cast a spell, creating a magic ball in front of the students, illuminating the room. Suddenly, the magic ball exploded with a bright light, blinding the students who were not expecting such a trick. Their reactions were mixed: surprise, fear, admiration. The teacher smiled and explained that this was a way to intimidate the enemy. She said that swordsmen or spearmen need persistence and training. Without this, it is impossible to become a master. The students listened attentively, trying to absorb every word. 3 students were practicing magic. Edel was there, looking at the target with concentration. He noticed that the target was made of a special metal that was resistant to magic. The test was serious. Geyser wondered if he would be angry with him if he broke the target and was at a loss. His indecision was noticeable. Edel, smiling, said that his brother needed to be a little softer. His gaze was kind and calmly confident. With a drop of sweat on his face, Geyser admitted that he was not very good at magic. Edel, with a slight grin, asked if this seemed true. This made Geyser feel a little embarrassed. He said that in his family of swordsmen, everyone hates magic and prefers the sword. This was said with a smile. Edel thought, rethinking what was said, and his face became serious. Edel enthusiastically said that there was a way to teach Geyser magic, and he, with his mouth open and his eyes wide, didn't believe it. Surprise was on his face. Edel put his hand forward, and Geyser didn't understand what he wanted to show. The idea was simple: shoot until the boy learned to cancel magic. It was a challenge. The hero was scared and said that if he was not marked enough, he could die. It was too dangerous. Fear sounded in his voice. Edel answered affirmatively that he had been in such situations many times and had survived by waking up in extreme conditions. It was a lesson learned from experience. The frightened friend excitedly admitted that he had made a mistake in asking such a question and hurried away. His steps sounded uncertain, diverging from the topic. He bumped into someone's shoulder and there was a crash. Fear seized him. He apologetically asked if everything was okay. He didn't mean to push anyone. The girl he pushed turned out to be Alice. Everything was fine, she was just a little surprised. There was tension in the air. The mysterious girl smirked and made a sarcastic remark towards the fallen woman, clearly expressing her displeasure at her appearance. Her words cut the ear, causing tension. Alice responded with a displeased look. They were obviously acquainted. But Geyser did not understand what was happening. There was hostility in the air. Edel was also perplexed, not understanding what the tension was between the girls. And that girl continued to say that she did not believe that Alice was so inept that she could not even start magic. The mysterious girl's eyes glowed with malice and contempt, as if she felt superior. The atmosphere became tense, hinting at an upcoming conflict. The poor thing, feeling the pain and grief that was reflected in every movement of her trembling body. Hatred burned in her eyes, deep, burning, like a fire flaring up inside after many insults. The two girls stood opposite each other, exchanging piercing glances, full of hidden hostility and misunderstanding. Between them, like a peacemaker, stood Edel, looking at this with confusion. It turned out that one of the girls was named Diana. Her name was heard in the air when someone shouted at her to be quiet. This shout was not just for nothing. Alice's blow was so strong and destructive. The heroine chuckled softly, covering her mouth with her hand as if trying to hide a mocking smile, and said that she was not at all interested in controlling magic. Her attention was riveted to the power of the small ball. Alice was taken aback, even slightly shocked by such words, and reproachfully shouted that she was capable of showing much more. Her voice trembled. She shouted back at her opponent, trying to prove her capabilities with the power of words. Clutching the staff in her hands, she began to cast a quick spell, trying to reproduce the necessary spell, but the magic was escaping her control, and she did not want to admit her own mistakes. A look of fear flashed across Alice's face, and a drop of sweat slowly rolled down her forehead. Everything had turned out completely differently than she had expected. The realization of failure came upon her suddenly and painfully. Diana covered her mouth with her hand, holding back the laughter that never left her lips for a moment, and a malicious grin played on her face. Her pleasure at failure was caustic and obvious. Then her laughter rang out loudly, loud, harsh, and mocking, echoing around the room, humiliating and disarming her rival. The girl stood there, holding back her tears, and Diana did not let up, finishing her off with words about her complete helplessness. She said that she did not even know how to cast the simplest spells and was simply useless in magic. The rival angrily recalled Alice's grandmother, a hero and a legend, and mockingly asked what she thought of such a useless granddaughter who did not live up to the family glory. These words touched her so much that she could not stand it and, overcome with anger, attacked Diana, ready to defend her dignity at any cost. Confident in her own strength, Diana announced that she would show real magic and had no intention of retreating before her opponent. She began to cast a spell, confidently pointing her finger forward, as if calling upon an invisible force, demonstrating her superiority and control over the elements. A powerful shockwave erupted from her finger and whistled as it hit the wall, causing a roar and vibration that could be felt throughout the entire room. Behind the back of the impudent Diana, Alice's displeasure was hidden. Her gaze was full of envy and bitterness, which she could not hide even from a distance. Lost in thought, she mentally transported herself into memories, scrolling through the events that happened 5 years ago in her head. She remembered how she had a promising magical potential that gave her hope and promised a great future. The girl never stopped believing that she would follow in her grandmother's footsteps. She remembered the moment when she stood next to the teacher, listening to him say that she would continue Maribel's work. Little Alice looked at the teacher with admiration, not being afraid or doubting that she could succeed. The student and the teacher stood opposite each other. The teacher confidently said that he believed in her, and she responded with mutual faith, thus her determination was tempered. Suddenly, a strange sound was heard somewhere nearby. It interrupted their conversation and made Maribel turn around in surprise. She looked out the window and wondered what was happening to Alice. But outside the window, her gaze was met by a huge explosion, softly illuminating the areas of the earth. Maribel cried out her granddaughter's name hotly, expressing both fear and anger. She did not see her granddaughter and thought that she was in danger. Turning around, she saw a little girl, her pride, and her heart sank with relief. She cried out in joy that the girl was okay, while the girl herself was scared and looked away. At that moment, the grandmother noticed a young man lying on the floor, rolling and screaming in pain, as if fate had put him through a difficult test. Maribel was shocked, her eyes filled with fear and horror. She could not believe what she saw in front of her. Alice's head was spinning. The thought that this particular guy had suffered because of her training did not give her any peace. The girl took her grandmother's hand, and at that moment everything became clear. Fear and responsibility for witchcraft took possession of her heart. These memories are full of horror and uncertainty. They seem to lie like a heavy burden on the girl's soul. After this, Alice entered the academy, beginning a long and difficult path of learning and self-improvement. Since then, the girl often returned to that unfortunate incident from her childhood and blamed herself for her failures compared to the greatness of her grandmother. Until now, she had been afraid of using magic. This internal conflict did not leave her alone and burned her from the inside. The girls finally decided that training was over for the day, and Diana was about to leave. Alice was sure that she was no longer capable of magic, as if her inner strength had left her forever and the last spark of hope had gone. But at that very moment, she heard a voice behind her. It was Edel, who asked why she was limiting herself so much. The girl was surprised and alarmed by this sudden intervention. She didn't expect an answer, so the young man's words caused her great shock and made her think about herself. Edel assumed that the girl was simply pretending not to know how to use magic, but in fact she had more control over it than she thought. Diana intervened in the conversation, her voice sharp and challenging, and she demanded that Alice really show her abilities. At that moment, an idea flashed through Edel's mind. Some time ago, Alice had released magical power towards him, and he suggested that he respond in kind. Edel reminded Alice that she could control magic, she was just afraid of losing control of it, and that kept her captive to her own fears. Suddenly it dawned on her. Gathering all her will into a fist, she clenched her palm, feeling the pressure of the situation, and Edel gently pressed on the sore spot, supporting and guiding her. Then she couldn't stand it any longer and admitted that because of her abilities, it was difficult for her to make friends, and she also didn't like that everyone saw her as just the hero's granddaughter, and now she felt unnecessary and superfluous. Alice screamed in despair, not knowing what to do or where to run. Her thoughts were confused, and tears poured down and blurred her eyes. Chaos tormented her soul, and every word was full of pain and confusion. Edel, his hand on his chest, looked at her with unusual calm, as if he was sure that everything would work out. His voice was quiet but firm. He promised to take care of everything and thought that Alice should just try her hand. Her nerves couldn't stand such calm. It seemed that he didn't hear her scream or ignored the pain she was trying to express. She began to scream at him in response, desperately trying to reach his heart. But suddenly, doubt pierced her mind. Perhaps this young man really knows what he is talking about, and it is worth listening to his advice. Her thoughts sparkled with new colors of hope. Alice's gaze became serious and determined. She told him directly that she was counting on his help and support. Confidence shone in her eyes like never before. Diana, smiling slyly, looked at them and mockingly asked her rival if she really wanted to try herself again, to challenge her. There was a challenge and provocation in her voice. Without losing confidence, Alice began to cast a spell, gathering all her will and strength into a powerful spell flow. She was determined to prove what she was capable of. Suddenly, a blinding flash burst towards Diana, so bright that her rival could not even utter a word and completely lost her orientation. Edel watched this action with his usual calm, as if proud of how she handled magic, and felt inner satisfaction from her success. After a successful spell, Alice breathed a sigh of relief, as if the tension had eased and she felt a new strength and power within herself, ready to fully reveal itself. Diana, unable to bear the surprise, began to scream in fear, her hair disheveled, and her open mouth expressed panic and horror at what was happening. A teacher wearing glasses ran into the room, her face expressing fear and anxiety. She was trying to understand what was happening to the students. She quickly gave a stern order. Everyone was to leave the room immediately, as the magical energy had become too dangerous and unpredictable to control. Edel stood in front of Alice, shielding her with his body, trying to help her cope with the raging force that threatened to destroy everything around her. Despite the chaos, he spoke with surprising calm, reminding that the main thing is to learn control and manage your power wisely. But the girl, overcome with emotion, began to shout back, ordering him to be silent, explaining that this was extremely difficult for her. In response, he only firmly stated he would not leave her alone and would support her, even if she wanted to give up. Behind Edel, Diana was still standing, frightened, unable to believe that Alice would be able to continue to cast spells despite all this chaos. The young man gently reminded the girl that she should under no circumstances allow anyone to humiliate or insult her. Alice shouted loudly and with conviction that she believed in him and in her own strength. This cry was the beginning of her new path. At the same time, the teacher, watching the boundless flow of magic, could not hide her admiration. It was truly grandiose, so subtle and powerful at the same time. A thought dawned on her mind: this girl could compare with her great-grandmother in terms of magical power, and this opened up new horizons for her. But the main problem was that Alice did not yet know how to control her strength. This aspect required long and hard training. Suddenly, a terrible whirlwind of magical energy approached Diana. As if it were alive, it wanted to absorb and destroy her, but she did not even understand where and why this threat suddenly appeared. At the most critical moment, Edel stood between the whirlwind and the girl, again holding back the destructive force and saving the girl from imminent death. Alice continued to cast spells, testing all her strength, but she could not understand how the young man managed to keep this raging magic in check, as if he had an invisible cord holding back the elements. He calmly and confidently told her that if she continued to persistently cast spells, sooner or later she would learn to control not only herself, but also her power, that control itself was a matter of practice and will. For Alice, this seemed almost impossible. The flow of magic was not endless, and she felt her strength quickly running out, and it was simply not possible to cast spells endlessly. Her legs were shaking and could barely hold her body up. Every cell was demanding rest, and it was becoming harder and harder for her to continue with every second. She was forced to stop casting her spell, and Edel anxiously asked what her difficulty was and what had caused her to stop. He gently touched her shoulder, trying to support her, and at that moment she muttered something indistinctly, still not having come to her senses. Then her gaze fell on her hands, and she noticed with surprise that the magical energy inside her had already been restored, as if recharged. She simply could not believe her own eyes. She looked at Edel in bewilderment, who calmly explained that he had managed to replenish her supply of magic. For him this was a normal, completely natural thing. He pointed his hand at the portal, which he said contained a huge amount of magical energy, like an inexhaustible source. Looking hopefully into Alice's eyes, he said that this magic had tens of times more reserves than a normal mage because they were still training and strengthening their powers. She was amazed and stunned by this possibility. At that moment, the bell rang, signaling the end of classes, which brought back reality and brought on mixed feelings of relief and desire to continue. Edel calmly told Alice that training would take place morning, afternoon, and evening, a regular rhythm necessary for success. She stood there, tired, staring into space. Unable to bear it any longer, she suddenly pointed her finger at him and screamed furiously, accusing him of selfishness and the fact that he only thought about himself, forgetting about her feelings and fears. Edel, in a voice full of patience, asked her to calm down, explaining that in reality everything that had happened was not as bad as it seemed, and that anxiety simply prevented her from seeing the situation clearly. Alice, confused and agitated, began to mumble something unintelligible, as if trying to find words that could calm her inner anxiety. The silence was broken by her crying, tears flowed like a stream, and, wiping them away, she could only utter one word of gratitude, quiet and sincere, filled with warm feelings. Edel was confused and could not understand the reason for her tears. This caused him slight disappointment because he wanted to help her and not upset her more. But then, through her tears, Alice exploded with anger. She screamed at him and slapped her fists in the air, demanding that he not ask unnecessary questions. She was irritated that he was so straightforward and did not read her emotions. In another corner, with a quiet smile on her face, stood Lady Mirabelle, watching everything that was happening with unchanging calm and a slight mockery. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, and a man entered the room, greeting Mirabelle warmly. It was the butler, who had an important message. Lady Mirabelle frowned and glanced with displeasure at the butler, who had been warned that the third prince had come to see her. She ordered the prince to be sent to the drawing room where he could rest and prepare for the meeting, making it clear that she was in no hurry. After some time, Mirabelle finally met the prince. His name was Rhodes. He turned out to be a nice and friendly man who greeted the lady warmly. She responded to his kind greetings by stating that she was fine and feeling well, but her words hid a subtle taunt and displeasure at his appearance. The prince, oblivious to her latent hostility, said that he wished her long life and good health, words that seemed sincere and warm. He also added that he would like Lady Mirabelle to retire and allow him to take over the school, thus expressing his ambitions and plans. The woman crossed her arms over her chest and firmly replied that she had no intention of leaving her place, even if he begged her to do so. Mirabelle began to tell her story. She came from a simple family, and in her school there was no difference between nobles and common people. Everyone was equal in her eyes. The prince responded to this by saying that he was not going to change the traditional order of things, but the woman remained skeptical and did not believe his words. She reminded him of his time at school, when he seemed like a kind and simple young man. Everything was different then. However, she soon noticed that in fact he only associated with aristocrats and was not interested in commoners, keeping them at a distance. The prince looked at her attentively and seriously, and she continued to say that ordinary people had never been equal to him. He responded by emphasizing that the school had produced excellent specialists who should interest the aristocracy, but the grandmother said that he was not at all concerned with the management of the school. The prince sadly admitted that the teachers did not believe him and that this was becoming a problem for him, but Mirabelle only sympathized with him while maintaining her coldness. With a look of displeasure, she reminded that she has a lot of experience and is not planning to retire yet, emphasizing that she would not approve of such changes. The prince looked disappointed but said he did not blame her for her position and intended to look for other ways. At this time, Alice was calmly wandering along the corridor, and the prince's thoughts were increasingly revolving around his upcoming plans. He understood that he would have to make difficult decisions, and he was curious what exactly he had in mind. Alice was incredibly tired, and without thinking, she plopped down on the soft bed. She simply lay down, spreading her arms, and allowed herself to forget about everything for a moment, immersing herself in the silence and peace of the room. Memories of training with Edel floated cautiously into her mind, constantly demanding her to give it her all, never allowing her a moment to rest. It seemed that rest had become a luxury for her. She glanced down at her outstretched hand, wondering if she could finally control her magical power. The question seemed to surge with a wave of excitement and anxiety at the same time, a riddle she longed to solve with all her heart. Deep down, she dreamed of something else, of real adventures, of living tests and explorations, and not of endless, seemingly boring training. This desire gave birth to new hope in her. The group of students stood attentively. Each word of the teacher was absorbed into their consciousness with unusual concentration. The teacher said that along with the usual classes, they regularly participate in real battles. Edel thought to himself that the place where they were now was really very special, only here they were surrounded by real demons, menacing and indomitable. This became a real test for him. The teacher continued her explanation by adding that this time 2 joint classes were planned, where the students would work shoulder to shoulder. A new teacher approached them, a man with a noticeable monocle who immediately introduced himself as Teacher Heisen. He quickly divided the team into 3 people and gave them a task to destroy the demon. The girls began to whisper, discussing the new guy. They noted that he had a pleasant face, evoking sympathy, but his stern look and behavior spoke of his seriousness and uncompromising nature. One of the girls addressed Edel, expressing joy and anticipation of working together with him, which caused surprise and a slight gleam in the eyes of the young man. He did not expect such warmth and friendliness from his colleague. The young man agreed with her. The girl's name was Tina, and her face was beaming with happiness. She was literally jumping for joy, delighted at the opportunity to work with an experienced and powerful magician. This showed her sincere belief in team spirit. Another participant did not share this uplifting mood. The young man grimaced and hissed condemningly about children's whims, thereby expressing skepticism and mockery about Tina's enthusiastic behavior. This guy seemed like a heavy man with a bitter soul, stood with his arms crossed and watched what was happening with a disgusted expression, as if to make it clear that emotions should give way to strict discipline. Edel's attempt to make contact with him failed when he unpleasantly rejected the gesture of an outstretched hand and coldly ordered him to stay away, showing his rejection and stubbornness. Tina, speaking in a whisper, explained to Edel that this unapproachable guy was called Gris, and that he was the eldest son of an influential viscount, which explained his arrogance. While the influential son continued to ignore those around him, many students found his behavior to be overly arrogant and insensitive to the feelings of others. Participants discussed how aristocrats can often be difficult to get along with, and that such challenges await each team in different forms. Tina asked Edel if he could have an influence on Gris similar to what he had with another student, Geyser, whom he was able to influence and help unlock his potential. The young man replied that he did not intend to change people against their will and did not consider this his task. His own growth and development was important to him, and not changing other people's natures. Gris, standing to the side, was discontentedly thinking about why he had to end up on a team with commoners, feeling obvious disdain and disgust towards them, not hiding his feelings. He chuckled softly, muttering something in anticipation of change, that the situation would soon change in his favor, and that he was ready for the upcoming events with a certain sophisticated strategy. Suddenly, a terrible creature with long, sharp ears ran out of the forest towards them, looking like a huge wild animal ready to attack. Without thinking, Tina boldly rushed into battle, raising her sword and swinging at the monster, demonstrating her courage and determination to protect the team. One of the students cried out that in front of them was not just an animal but a living tree, which at first puzzled Tina and made her hesitate for a moment and rethink the situation. Indeed, before them appeared an ominous tree with deep-set eyes and a huge mouth, radiating anger and danger, as if nature itself had decided to give battle. Edel, keeping his cool, was in no hurry to intervene, carefully observing what was happening, assessing the situation with an optimal balance of risk and benefit. His attention was focused on Gris, who stood motionless, avoiding participation in the battle and clearly not intending to provide assistance. Edel looked at him with obvious incomprehension, why he refused to support his comrades at such a moment and did not show team spirit. The hero's eyes searched for answers, his mind tried to understand the motives for such indifference, pondering the possible causes and consequences. Meanwhile, Tina continued her furious fight with the tree, demonstrating not only desperate courage but also the skills acquired in training. Realizing that her strength was running out, she ran up to the young man and begged for help, slightly knocked down, hoping for the support of an experienced comrade. Edel, assessing the situation, decided that this battle would be an excellent practice for her, which would help her strengthen her control over magic and believe in herself. He was asked how he knew that the creature was one of the typical trends for training, and he explained the reasons and signs in detail, but simply, as if it was a natural thing for him. He noted that such monsters can be defeated with magic, using the right spells and tactics, which Tina is still learning and has not yet achieved mastery. Edel asked if Gris had any magic, and she responded by saying that he had no class and that he looked at others with arrogance and showed no respect. The girl added that teacher Heisen was a typical aristocrat with his high demands and cold attitude. She also noted that, unlike him, Teacher Chartier does not differentiate students by status and treats everyone equally, showing humanity and respect. Heisen turned out to be a nobleman who showed severity and even some hatred towards commoners, as if not wanting to see them as his equals. Edel was agitated by something, his eyes filled with horror, as if a sense of impending danger had awakened in his soul. He said that he felt 10 unknown beings approaching, and his voice sounded alarmed, which caused Tina to scream excitedly and assume that there were demons. Edel hastened to reassure her, explaining that these were not demons, but something else, and that they needed to be prepared to face an unusual and dangerous force. 10 strangers emerged from behind the bushes and trees and watched the group closely, as if they were about to engage in combat or make an unexpected move. The girl was stunned as she watched Edel notice events and objects at a great distance with extraordinary accuracy. She couldn't believe her eyes, as if a new world had opened up before her. Edel explained that with the right searching methods and the use of magic, one could detect enemies even hundreds of kilometers away, as if possessing supernatural vision and sensitivity. Before them appeared mysterious strangers, shrouded in hoods, giving them the appearance of ghostly forces capable of inspiring fear. However, Gris stood calmly, arms crossed over his chest, showing no fear. The faces of these people were hidden behind masks, and their identities remained a secret, which increased the atmosphere of uncertainty and danger around. No one could understand who these mysterious figures really were. The strangers quietly talked among themselves, realizing that the children standing before them were students of the School of Heroes, and therefore it was necessary to exercise special caution and not make hasty moves. They drew their sabers and pointed them at the children, threatening that if they resisted, they would have to use deadly force, forcing the students to realize the seriousness of their situation. Tina, frightened, hid behind Edel, whispering that they should leave this place since there were significantly more opponents and they had almost no chance of survival. Having received the answer that escape was impossible, she realized that the situation had become critical. They really would not be able to leave, even if they really wanted to, and they would have to face a formidable enemy face to face. Suddenly, Gris, who had remained calm and unperturbed until then, spoke up. He agreed that the boys would soon be caught, which was a very strange and disturbing move on his part. He said he didn't consider himself a victim. The real victims would be the children. Tina looked at him with confusion and bewilderment, trying to understand her ally's motivation. She grabbed the handle of her weapon, preparing to defend herself, and asked what exactly this young man meant, expressing doubt and anxiety. Suddenly, he swung at her, but Tina was fast and was able to block his attack in time, proving her endurance and fighting skills. At that moment, the girl was attacked from behind by hoods and masks, but she managed to notice them in time, which saved her from unexpected danger. Everyone suddenly collided with an invisible barrier that stopped the attack, leaving the attackers confused and bewildered by the unexpected obstacle. Edel watched all this with a smile, probably having created this powerful and impenetrable barrier with his own efforts. Suddenly, he turned to Gris, who was holding someone in his arms, clearly unsure of what to do next, choosing between danger and protection. Jumping up quickly, the young man sharply hit the young man in the chest with his knee. The movement was sharp and deft, which disoriented him. After this, Edel asked the falling man if he was an accomplice of these mysterious strangers, suspecting hidden betrayal and deception. He assumed that it was Gris who led the enemies there, since he always walked forward, opening the way and setting the pace for the movement. The masked men seemed stupid and did not understand what it meant to be an accomplice, which added to the comicality of their cruelty and ignorance. They were given the order to destroy the barrier, and they began to methodically search for weapons and ways to break through it. There was a deafening sound. It seemed that the barrier had been broken through, but in fact, not a single attempt was successful. The masked men did not understand what had happened, their efforts were in vain, and the barrier remained impenetrable. Edel looked at them with contempt, as if realizing their stupidity and helplessness in the face of such a powerful defense. Suddenly, there was a deafening explosion, filling the air with chaos and dust, causing panic among the attackers. Many managed to jump away at the last moment, but some were caught inside the blast zone, becoming victims of a surprise attack. Fear and horror were evident in their eyes as they realized their vulnerability to the force they were facing. The children standing nearby and not feeling the explosion remained alive, which strengthened their spirit and added confidence. The masked men could not understand how this had happened, and now saw Edel as a dangerous enemy, deciding to capture him along with the others. Tina stood silently next to him, her gaze directed towards her ally, and in her soul there was fear mixed with hope for safety. 10 strangers emerged from behind the bushes and trees and watched the group closely, as if they were about to engage in combat or make an unexpected move. Suddenly, Tina was dumbfounded when she saw how Edel, like a whirlwind, conquered all the enemies. The masked men lay fallen on the ground, helpless and powerless before his power. The girl touched Edel with a trembling hand, looking gratefully into his eyes. He responded with a satisfied smile, feeling proud of his victory and the defense of the team. The masked men were shocked and began to think that what had happened was a simple joke, not suspecting that such a young man could become such a serious threat. Edel, without losing his concentration, looked at the fallen and firmly stated that he needed details, who they were, what they wanted, and what their goal really was. Gris, holding his hands on his stomach where he had been hit, stood near the tree with bitterness and anger. His gaze burned with hatred for the common people. The insult and humiliation were still fresh in his soul. An indignant Tina shouted at him, saying that he was in no position to say anything about commoners now, since his wounds and defeats spoke for him better than words. Edel grabbed Gris tightly by the jacket, leaving him no choice, and pulled him aside to talk calmly, find out the truth, and extract the necessary information. Tina, watching what was happening, asked in bewilderment where he was taking him and what he intended to do with the defeated enemy. With a cheerful but mysterious smile on his face, Edel replied that he just wanted to find out everything, and his approach did not involve unnecessary cruelty. Tina joked that it would be much more effective to color Gris right now while he was dragging himself along the ground. Her comment reflected mild sarcasm and an attempt to defuse the situation. Edel, looking at her, assured her that he would not overdo it and would not go to extreme measures. That was not his style. Tina decided not to look at what might follow and turned away, avoiding unnecessary emotions and worries. While Edel was pulling Gris, his thoughts were occupied with the fate of Alice's team. worries about their safety did not leave his heart. Meanwhile, the defeated man weakly asked to let him go, trying to preserve the remains of his dignity. He could not restrain himself and began to shout that the aristocrats would not forgive Edel for such antics, warning of the serious consequences of his behavior. Then Edel threatened him that he could make him forget everything that had happened, although he warned that it would be painful. Gris flinched in fear, and the dark-haired youth hit him without hesitation. Desperate cries and pleas for mercy filled the air as hooded men began to fall to their knees, begging for salvation, but their words seemed powerless against the oncoming force. Meanwhile, Alice stood firm and determined, looking forward with a fixed gaze, full of confidence and inner strength. Behind her stood Diana and another girl, ready to support and protect her at any cost. In front of them were the same mysterious people in hoods and masks, like clouds hanging over the group, ready to fall at any moment with an attack and terrible force. Alice raised her hands in concentration, summoning magic that surrounded her like a vortex of light and energy. Her confident stance and calm indicated that she had finally gained strength and control. Diana warned that she should stay away from her partner, because her power was not yet completely under her control and could turn against the girl herself and those around her. The mysterious hooded men watched Alice's unremarkable magic with distrust and disdain, thinking that these were just light tricks that could not harm them. Alice began to speak solemnly. Her voice sounded not only confident but also penetrating, as if instilling in fate the inevitability of her decision and actions. With focus and strength in her hearts, she summoned a giant monster from her magic, sending streams of energy straight at her enemies, who were caught off guard by the scale of her power. The magical flow reached the hoods, crashing down on them with fury, causing them to scream loudly and resist desperately, but they could not resist such power. Feeling that the battle was won, Alice began to gradually weaken the spell, her magic slowly fading away, leaving behind silence and a sense of victory. The girl standing next to her was indescribably delighted and inspired by the charms that made her heart beat faster and believe in her powers. Alice knew that she had mastered all this magic in harsh and tough training conditions, Spartan, devoid of pity, where every moment was a test. Diana looked at her with a slight sadness, listening to the heroine herself admit that she had not yet achieved perfection and believed that she had not learned everything that could possibly be learned. There was a question in the air, as if it had not been spoken aloud. What was this phenomenon? What force led to such an unprecedented outcome of the fight? Diana's mysterious gaze slid across the stage. From somewhere came the opinion that it was impossible for just a group of children to defeat an entire army of experienced opponents. The monocled teacher's voice cut through the tense silence, declaring that even the villains here were far from the strongest, meaning the real threat was yet to come. In response, one of the villains lowered his head, expressing guilt and humility, as if acknowledging his own failure and realizing the seriousness of what had happened. The boys silently watched this dialogue and asked themselves a logical question: what does all this mean? For some reason, the teacher is standing in the middle of such enemies, but what role does he play in this story? The teacher calmly turned to Alice, urging her to turn around, saying that it was done only for her own good, as if preparing her for unexpected discoveries. At that very moment, the girl understood the truth, who was really behind these attacks and who was to blame for the fact that their team was in danger, opening up new mysteries and challenges for her. Alice froze in place, overcome by conflicting thoughts and feelings. She tried in vain to understand whether Hizen was really a traitor, and how her faith in her teacher could be so suddenly shattered. Gathering her courage, she asked a decisive question: why does he need all this? Because he is a teacher at the academy, called to protect and teach, and not to betray. Hizen replied coldly and contemptuously that he would not have been able to work here if he had known in advance that he would have to teach commoners, whom he hated with all his heart. Such words cut Alice like a dagger. He continued that the policy of equality between nobles and commoners should be stopped, and he absolutely did not like such an idea. For Alice, these words sounded disgusting, and in her soul she felt a deep rejection of the teacher. After a short pause, as if weighing each next step, he began to explain more slowly and clearly what exactly he thought was necessary to implement these ideas. There was danger and cold calculation in his voice. Finally, Hizen said with an icy smile that old Mirabelle, the symbol of resistance and the school's strength, must be destroyed. A glimmer of malice flickered in his eyes, causing Alice to shudder. He looked away, as if seeking strength to continue his dark speech, his eyes shining with determination. Each of his words weighed like a sentence. He then explained the plan: to take the students hostage and lure the head of the academy out of the building. And looking straight into Alice's eyes, he added that she would also play her part. Alice responded with an angry look, full of defiance. She asked about the fate of the second teacher Shaltil without seeing him nearby. His gaze expressed arrogance, as if she was asking a trivial question of the girl. Shaltil, unconscious, surrounded by masked and hooded people whose faces were hidden in the shadows. Despite the fact that he considered her a noblewoman, she directly refused to support his plans, which stunned Alice. Behind Alice stood her partner, asking worriedly what to do now. Without hesitation, she spread her arms out in front of her and confidently demanded that everyone step aside, her voice sounding firm and decisive, instilling hope. She racked her brain and thought, if she was caught, her grandmother would be mercilessly killed. This worried her, and she desperately searched for a way out, a plan and hope. Through the tension, she summoned 5 powerful magical monsters that stood frozen next to her, embodying strength and protection. The teacher with a monocle looked at this with surprise. He had never encountered such powerful magic coming from such a young girl. With a slight smile, he began to confidently dodge the attacks, stating that it didn't matter how strong the magic was, the main thing was to dodge in time. Alice became more and more powerful, demonstrating the full depth of her strength, but the teacher continued to avoid her blows, as if playing cat and mouse. It turned out that she had summoned another monster, which particularly surprised Hyzen. He did not expect such power from the young student. Maintaining control over the 2 monsters proved extremely difficult, but Alice did her best to keep them from falling. She surrounded the teacher with magical energy on both sides, squeezing his surroundings as if into a trap, but he watched calmly, as if accepting the challenge. Hearing that he was not afraid of her, and that her strength was not enough, Alice became frightened. These words penetrated deeply and made her feel insecure. The entire group of girls were terrified, not knowing what to expect from the cold and unpredictable teacher. Fear was in their eyes. The teacher silently lowered his gaze, froze as if before a storm, and then suddenly rose up, as if emerging from underground, deftly dodging the blow. Hyzen said he never thought he would have to use such magic, but he was calm and ready for any fight. He made some barbs at Alice, called her the hero's granddaughter, and laughed, trying to hurt her pride. These words made Alice angry. She flared up with rage and could not help screaming, declaring that he was talking complete nonsense. Remembering Edel's teachings about strength and endurance, she gathered all the lessons within herself and recalled their difficult training. She swung with determination, loudly declaring that she was not going to die here and now, her voice sounding like a challenge. Suddenly, there was a thumping sound and something heavy dropped down her back. It was an unexpected blow, and Alice slowly began to lose her balance. She fell to the ground, almost unconscious, not understanding what was happening around her, and lay motionless. Her eyes slowly closed, her body refused to obey, and only darkness remained in her mind. At the last moment, a silhouette of a man appeared before her eyes, vague and mysterious, leaving open the question of what awaits the girl next. The person whose silhouette flashed before Alice's eyes as she lay unconscious was Diana. She looked down on the girl with a smirk and mockingly grinned. With her last strength, lying on the cold ground, Alice realized the painful truth. Diana was involved in this attack and betrayed their friendship. Horror and resentment filled her still weakening body. The teacher, with a cold and evil expression on his face, told of his insidious plan. He deliberately included an aristocrat in each team in order to break the spirit of the students and betray them from within. The curly-haired girl was touched, realizing that she would no longer meet face-to-face with her rival, enjoying the thought of her defeat and pain. Alice, using her last strength, tried to say something, but her voice was weak and intermittent. The words barely came out of her chest. She felt her strength leaving her. Suddenly, the teacher raised his hand, preparing to strike, wanting to silence Alice and stop fighting against his plans forever. But at the most critical moment, someone grabbed the teacher's hand powerfully, stopping him and depriving him of the opportunity to complete the blow. It was Edel, calm but determined, holding the aggressor's hand firmly, not giving him a chance to continue the bad action. His eyes widened when he saw his girlfriend lying unconscious on the ground. She quietly but desperately screamed his name, daring him to action. Hearing the familiar name, the teacher realized that this was the same Edel he had not expected to see here. His eyes narrowed in surprise and concern. He looked back to find Alice in the same place, but there was only emptiness. The girl had disappeared, as if she had dissolved into thin air. Looking in the other direction, he saw how the young man was carefully holding that very girl in his arms, as if saving her life without the slightest doubt. Edel carefully laid Alice on the ground and, looking at her with a soft smile, praised her for her courage and willpower, convincing her that she had done a great job and could be proud of herself. Then he looked up at the teacher and said with determination that he was left alone, as if he had been abandoned by everyone, and at that moment there was a readiness in him for further action. Surprised and confused, the man asked why he was left alone, especially considering that he had a whole team ready to help him. A moment later he looked around and realized that his allies were defeated, and even Diana was lying unconscious on the ground. It all happened so quickly that it seemed like seconds had changed the entire battle. Edel confidently stated that he had taken care of everything and dealt with the rest of the opponents, while Alice distracted the teacher with conversations. His actions were lightning fast and precise, leaving no chance for the enemies. He looked at the teacher calmly and unwaveringly, as if he stood up for his friends. At that moment, he heard the teacher ask where the aristocrat from the team had gone. With a flick of his wrist, Edel summoned Gris himself from the portal. The young man looked shocked and confused, as if he had just emerged from a whirlpool of events. The teacher looked at this in complete shock, not expecting such a turn of events. He let out a puzzled groan, as if trying to understand what was happening. Gris, meeting the man's gaze, looked at him guiltily, as if he realized the full depth of his betrayal and the consequences. While the teacher was still trying to comprehend what was happening, Edel calmly reported that he had interrogated the young man and learned a lot from his interview. The villain, clearly irritated, noted that his aristocratic students seemed to have gone crazy, speaking about this as if nothing serious was happening. In response, Edel clarified that he had simply studied him, had not tortured anyone, and had not done anything terrible. With a slight smile, he said that this boy was one of those who would be healed from the inside, despite the external brokenness, and that everything would be fine with him. He watched him carefully. The teacher clenched his fist with explosive rage, reminding him that he still had hostages and that it was not too late to turn the tide of events in his favor. Edel looked at him with confidence and composure, listening attentively to his words, not giving in to provocations or threats. He stated that it was thanks to Gris's hints that he was able to destroy all the guards. It was a successful move that turned the situation around. During this time, Tina was busy treating the rescued students, providing support and care to those who needed help after the battle. The hero noted with satisfaction that the villain's plans had failed, and that he had not managed to bring anything to life. Enraged and disgraced, the teacher began to shout, not believing that the boy had been able to uncover his intrigues and win. He thought it was just intimidation. The boy replied that he did not know what true friendship was until he came to the human world, which the teacher could not understand and perceived with anger and bewilderment. He looked at Alice, damaged and tired, with one eye narrowed, and said that he could feel her pain and anger, which caused him strong feelings, emotions that had previously been foreign to him. He offered the teacher to surrender, looking at him with wide eyes, showing that he had no desire to play endless games with the man. He could not bear it and rushed at Edel with a sword, ordering him to shut up and submit to his will. The boy stood motionless, not even trying to dodge, and thought that it was even to his advantage that the enemy was rushing into battle with such fury. But then a dark, incomprehensible substance wrapped around the young man's leg, as if the darkness itself had grabbed him, but he clenched his fists and remained calm, preparing for the upcoming battle. The villain took aim at the young man, believing that everything would be over right now. Edel says nothing interesting is happening right now. Suddenly, an unexpected event occurs, which makes the villain surprised and exclaim. The hero says that the man is moving too slowly in this battle. A quick action occurs related to the impact. The teacher reacts by showing shock at what has happened. The teacher swings his sword at the protagonist, hoping that he will be able to attack in time. The hero carefully examines the teacher's sword, checking its condition with his own hands. Suddenly, the man discovers that the sword breaks under the slightest pressure. This shocks and irritates him, as he did not expect such fragility from his weapon. The hero continues to test the sword, but it breaks again, increasing his dissatisfaction. The situation becomes comical, as the sword turns out to be completely unsuitable for combat. Edel admits that the sword broke simply from the pressure, demonstrating its uselessness. His reaction is one of surprise and bewilderment, as this clearly does not meet expectations. The teacher laughs at the situation, pointing out that the sword is coated with poison that can kill even a wyvern. The problem with the sword is much more serious than it initially seemed. The man expresses disappointment, stating that it was a big mistake to take him bare-handed. He adds that no matter how strong Edel is, he will still be defeated. The hero looks surprised and perplexed, not understanding what is happening and the reasons for such behavior. The teacher does not understand why the hero has no reaction to the poison, to which Edel says that he feels a slight tingling sensation. Alice laughs, pointing out that the poison won't work on this guy. This surprises the hero, who doesn't understand what she's talking about. The girl doesn't understand what is being said. Suddenly, the teacher starts laughing loudly and uncontrollably, showing a shocked reaction to the situation. The man is in a dark space, raising his hand up as if calling or activating something. Suddenly, a powerful figure in armor and a mask appears, radiating strength and menace. This character displays confidence and readiness for action, creating an atmosphere of danger. The hero expresses surprise. He clearly does not understand what is happening, especially when the teacher begins to laugh at his reaction, indicating that the situation is more serious than he assumed. Edel encounters an ancient superweapon, the Dragon Machine. This weapon, which was hidden deep within the ruins and has now been resurrected for the modern era, heightens the tension of the situation. The hero learns that he is in possession of the most powerful weapon capable of destroying Maribel. His reaction is one of shock and fear as he realizes the magnitude of the threat this weapon poses. The teacher says that he hasn't tested the new weapon yet, and it would be a good time to try it on the heroes. The hero asks a question, surprised by how the teacher controls the creature from within. In response, a powerful creature appears, demonstrating its power. The man declares that he will add his brains to the creature to create the most powerful dragon. He expresses confidence that it will be a unique creation, perhaps something never seen before. The villain admires the creature's strength. He speaks of his willingness to sacrifice himself in the name of progress, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation and his determination to act. The hero notices a sudden movement. The creature responds that it needs to fight, indicating readiness for combat or a test. The teacher is surprised to see Edel dodge his attack. The hero compares the creature to the dragons of the demon world, stating that they were slightly stronger, which underlines his confidence in his own strength. The hero expresses surprise and alarm when the enemy states that his attacks will be completely neutralized by the strong armor. The enemy emphasizes that the hero will not be able to simply dodge the attacks. The teacher confidently says that Edel has no chance of winning. The atmosphere of tension increases as the hero realizes the seriousness of the situation. The man notices the sudden disappearance of the young man. This causes him surprise and concern as he does not understand where his rival has disappeared to. Edel suddenly reappears, displaying power and speed. The teacher reacts with shock, making sounds of pain or fear. The teacher received a minor injury. The hero is surprised to see that the enemy is showing signs of madness after a strong blow. He also admires the strength of the enemy's armor, which withstands his attack. The enemy demonstrates his technique, claiming that it once destroyed an entire castle. This increases the tension and emphasizes his danger. Edel actively defends himself against his opponent, using all his strength to overcome his attack. The hero asks the opponent if he can manipulate his body or powers in the same way. The teacher expresses disbelief and indignation, calling the opponent's words nonsense. In response, the opponent resolutely states that this is a last resort, indicating a willingness to use extreme measures to win. Edel sees the huge explosion that the teacher used. The hero notices that long-range artillery rockets are moving behind him. The teacher claims that they can destroy an entire country and their price is quite high, but he is ready to spend them to defeat the young man. Edel is resolute in stating that he will try to act as he plans. At the same time, he expresses concern, asking what he should do in this situation. The enemy laughs and asks how long the hero can run. His tone is confident and challenging, indicating his intention to pursue the hero. The teacher is surprised to see something on the screen, possibly important information or a threat. He looks worried, trying to figure out what exactly he is seeing. He says the boy is trying to change his trajectory to attack him with the same missiles. The enemy shows confidence in his strength, stating that Edel won't even be able to reach him, and takes off. The teacher expresses surprise, asking how the hero was able to approach so quickly. His reaction is one of shock and alarm, indicating the suddenness of the attack. Edel demonstrates his power by attacking with unexpected speed. The enemy looks scared and defenseless against such force, which increases the tension of the situation. The hero notices that his surroundings are beginning to be destroyed or deformed by the enemy's power. He casts the Tengu spell. The teacher asks where the hero is, since he cannot see due to his great speed. Edel continues his attack, causing even more astonishment in the teacher. He reacts with bewilderment, not understanding how to counter this situation. The opponent goes into shock, making sounds of pain, indicating that they have just been hit with a powerful blow and attack. the teacher expresses surprise and disbelief, stating that it is impossible to destroy the dragon. His reaction demonstrates shock at what is happening and an inability to believe the reality of the situation. He decides to hide in the shadows and retreat, realizing that the situation is too dangerous for him. The man admits that it is useless to continue fighting and that he needs to find a safe place. He ponders the consequences of his decision. He understands that running away may be pointless, but he also fears possible punishment for not fulfilling his task. His internal conflict intensifies. The teacher sees Edel catching up with him, causing him to start screaming and feeling terrified. Edel grabs his opponent by the shoulder as he tries to escape from him. The hero throws him to the ground, causing the teacher to feel pain from the blow. The young man offers his opponent to try the poison he took earlier. The teacher expresses intense pain and shock by making sounds of pain. His reaction indicates that he has just been hit or attacked with a powerful blow. The enemy asks how many times the action must be repeated, showing surprise and bewilderment. Edel replies that they will repeat it many times, emphasizing the determination to continue the action despite the difficulties. The man asks to wait, perhaps to assess the situation or think of the next step. The girl notes that the old weapon broke in a self-deprecating manner, which causes surprise among the other characters. She adds that a flesh and blood person could not break such a weapon, emphasizing the uniqueness of what is happening. Alice admits that she would not have believed it if she had not seen it with her own eyes. Her words highlight the improbability of the situation and the importance of personal experience in understanding what happened. The enemy, tied up with ropes, asks for forgiveness for his actions. The girl reports that Diana and other students who collaborated with Heisen have been expelled from the school. The girl calls out to Alice. The girl holds a book and expresses concern as she hears that they should be more vigilant, especially around aristocrats. Alice realizes that similar events could happen again and decides that she needs to learn how to defend herself. Edel meets other familiar characters, such as Geyser and Alice. They themselves are surprised by each other's appearance and ask how they ended up there, emphasizing the unexpectedness of the meeting. Geyser addresses Edel as bro and asks him to train him. He admits that he has realized his weakness, sin. He expresses his willingness to change and become better, demonstrating inner growth and awareness of his shortcomings. The hero says that if he fails to complete the task, he will not be able to consider Edel his brother. This emphasizes his responsibility and desire to live up to expectations. The girl declares that she wants to learn to defend herself and become stronger. Her determination and desire for independence evoke understanding and agreement from the hero. Edel asks them if they can handle his training, which is notoriously difficult. He stresses that the training will be difficult but necessary for their development. Two characters are talking, one of them confidently agrees to the proposal. The woman expresses regret, saying that even she, as a teacher, could not do anything in the current situation. She admits that she underestimated the strength of the enemy who destroyed the ancient weapon, the dragon machine, in one night. The man states that it was a difficult case and that no one could have guessed that the teacher had become a traitor. His reaction indicates shock and rejection of what is happening. The teacher says that she sent messengers to the hero several times, but he refused to communicate with them. The man wonders about the third prince, perhaps trying to understand his role in the events. Heisen gave unequivocal testimony, emphasizing the importance of his testimony in the investigation. The girl notices that the man in question has moved from words to actions. She assumed that such actions were his style, indicating that she expected such behavior. The director expresses the opinion that Heisen may not have been the only ally. He also adds that he does not think the man will give up, showing confidence in his determination to continue his actions. The man asks in surprise why Heisen continues to bully him. The teacher senses concern and certainty that he will make another move, indicating her concern about the man's future actions. Geyser expresses fatigue and says he can't continue training any longer. He addresses another character as bro and acknowledges his limits. Edel points out that if the boy fails to complete the task, he will use the projectiles against him. His tone is determined, emphasizing the importance of completing the task. Geyser tries to create a fireball, but his attempts end in failure. The hero watches this process. Edel notices Alice's progress, saying that her control has improved significantly. They discuss how their reactions have improved since training with Geyser. The heroes decide to move on to real training. One of them suggests a place to train, and the girl asks where they are going, showing confusion about the plans. Alice notices that there were no doors in this place before. She is surprised by the changes in the space and begins to wonder about what is happening. The girl admires the size of the room but expresses confusion, asking where they are. The situation seems strange as they expect to be on the first floor, but the furnishings look unusual. Edel explains that this place is a training ground he created to train in safety. He admits that he created this subspace out of dissatisfaction with the normal training areas. The hero notices that there is another place that can be used for training. He offers to start training, demonstrating his willingness to begin practice. Suddenly, two huge monsters with open mouths appear and attack the heroes. The heroes express shock and surprise when they notice the demons. Edel explains that this is the magic that creates the demons. He emphasizes the seriousness of the situation, pointing out the danger these creatures pose. The heroes are in a tense situation where they encounter powerful demonic creatures. Alice actively uses a magical artifact for protection. Geyser expresses surprise and concern, asking his brother how many of these creatures will appear. He also notes that these creatures are very strong, indicating the seriousness of the threat. Edel estimates that the number of demonic creatures could be around 1,000, which adds to their concern and understanding of the scale of the problem. Geyser asks his brother for help. His voice is full of despair, indicating that the situation is becoming critical. The heroes try to defend themselves from the attacking demons. They show determination to continue fighting despite the danger. Alice says that this is just training, trying to calm the other one who is under stress. Geyser is in a dangerous situation where he encounters a huge creature with sharp teeth. Edel reassures him that everything will be fine, although the situation looks tense. The hero finds himself in a difficult situation, under attack. He expresses pain and shock at what is happening, demonstrating physical tension and fear. The girl notices something strange, asking what this phenomenon is. She points out that Geyser's body is recovering from an injury, causing surprise among the other characters. Edel admits that he could have warned about this earlier, but the situation remains complicated. Edel reveals that he has died several times in the past, emphasizing his experience and strength. 3 hours later, the heroes are in an exhausted state, lying on the floor. They feel completely drained and unable to continue fighting, indicating that their efforts have reached their limit. The hero expresses admiration, saying that his brother is truly ruthless. They exchange farewells, agreeing to see each other tomorrow. Geyser thinks that it might be a love letter from a girl. He is surprised and a little confused, not understanding why he received such a letter. At the same time, the hero admits that he needs to make an effort for something important. Geyser feels a bad feeling, indicating that something is wrong. The boy claims to be the older brother, emphasizing his role and responsibility. He says he came here straight after school, hinting at the importance of the meeting or the matter he had to resolve. The hero asks if the guy is justifying himself to him. He turns to Geyser, who looks worried and apologizes for his actions. The relative expresses disappointment, saying that instead of his father, who was busy managing the estate, he himself had to look after the situation. He admits that since the hero was a baby, he has been looking after him. He asks why he chose today out of his busy schedule. He also mentions that he heard about Geyser being beaten by a commoner. His tone indicates surprise and concern about what is happening. The brother states that this is not all the problems, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. He expresses displeasure, calling the hero an idiot, which increases the tension between them. The hero tries to explain his position, but the older brother indignantly asks why he should endure ridicule because of him. The brother expresses irritation, stating that he does not need Geyser's pathetic excuses. His tone is full of dissatisfaction and impatience. He confidently says that this time the hero will defeat the commoner. He emphasizes that the hero will have the opportunity to avenge the previous defeat. The brother claims that this is the only way out. However, the hero admits that he cannot make such a decision, demonstrating doubts and unwillingness to act. The elder brother strikes Geyser again. Geyser expresses fear and anxiety, saying that he is scared. The boy notices that the hero does not obey his orders and adds that he lacks discipline. The young man feels the desire to escape, but his condition limits his options. The brother expresses irritation, stating that he must make the younger man understand the importance of the situation. He calls the man a rare cretin, emphasizing his discontent and determination. Geyser notes that the situation is reminiscent of the past, but the pain is not as strong now. The brother suggests taking revenge, pointing out the need to defeat the enemy. The relative wonders if Geyser will actually do what he says, but the younger one refuses the idea. Edel and Alice discuss where Geyser might be now. He warned that he might be late, but a lot of time has passed. Edel reminds that Geyser asked for the training and can't just leave. He emphasizes that they can't let him get away with it, pointing out the need to come back and continue the situation. Alice wonders how they will search for Geyser. Edel suggests using the scent marks he made to help them find him. The girl notices a magic circle in the air that looks unusually three-dimensional. This surprises her, as magic circles are usually flat. Alice sees that something changes and appears in this circle. Edel uses a spell to summon followers, indicating the use of magic for a special action. The hero learns that the person in front of him is a wolf demon named Fenrir. He expresses calm upon learning that it is a legendary demon, emphasizing the importance and danger of the situation. Real, who can speak, asks his master what he wants to do. He demonstrates his willingness to help and emphasizes his loyalty. The girl is surprised that the wolf can speak their language. She expresses concern, fearing that if the situation becomes known at school, it will cause panic. Fenrir expresses confidence that the geyser is somewhere nearby. The girl says that they are too fast. She also wants Real to become smaller and not talk, so that there will be no suspicion at school. Edel uses magic for this and fulfills the request. The heroes wonder why the man came to the first year. The other characters are surprised by his appearance. Edel notices that he senses the presence of Geyser. Edel thanked the wolf for his help. Another student, seeing the hero and the wolf, does not let them into the room. The student is surprised by the wolf's behavior and asks what kind of dog it is. Edel confirms that he knows someone from this place, demonstrating familiarity with the surroundings. The young man pays no attention and opens the door. In the room, they ask Edel who he is. Edel looks at Geyser and asks if he has been training. The young man replies that he has not been training. Someone says it was just a one-sided beating. Edel notices something and turns around. A young man appears and asks Edel if he really beat his brother. He did not expect Edel to come to them himself. The young man does not understand what is being said. The man says that they have a very important conversation, so he asks the guys to take Edel out of the room. The heroes discuss the situation, where one of them calms Edel down, saying that he shouldn't worry. The other hero suggests going outside and playing, demonstrating a frivolous attitude towards what is happening. Edel easily clears out the student obstacles to get to Geyser. Also, the student who wanted to stop the hero was unable to cope with him. Edel's strength amazes the other students at the school. The hero says that they should go to training, but the older brother warns that he has brought serious consequences on himself by starting a fight in this place. The man tells Edel that he won't let him go just like that. Geyser says that after finishing school, his brother decided to become a knight of the royal fencing. He also mentions that he founded a fencing club in his 4th year. The brother takes out his sword and wants to attack Edel. The student expresses irritation, saying that the young man is being disrespectful. The hero states that he doesn't care whether the opponent uses one or both hands. He is surprised when he sees Edel draw his sword, asking how he was able to block the blow so easily, emphasizing his skill and mastery in swordsmanship. Geyser's older brother flies into the wall from the hero's blow. He asks what it was, showing surprise and bewilderment at what happened. Edel asks the student why he is unhappy with the answer. The girl notices that a member of the Gregel family is sitting on the ground, which arouses her interest and questions. She asks why he is acting like this. The hero admits that as a member of the Gregel family, he cannot afford such a state. His reaction shows that he feels shame or inadequacy, especially in the context of his belonging to the family. The hero notices a battle sword and asks if he can wield it. The boy points out that it is the most powerful technique, available only to those who wield the sword. Gregel declares that it is time to finish the enemy and show no mercy, even if he is a newcomer. He prepares to use his sword for the finishing blow. Edel notices that the enemy is about to attack him and does not understand where that powerful attack is. Gregel asks in surprise how Edel countered his powerful technique. His reaction shows shock and confusion as to how this was possible. The student wonders why the hero is the one who can use this technique. He admits that even he took many years to master it, emphasizing the complexity and uniqueness of the situation. The hero states that he used this technique when he was 5 years old. His tone indicates confidence in his abilities and experience. Gregel doubts the hero's words, asking if he could really use such a technique at full power at the age of 5. He expresses disbelief, considering it impossible. He denies Edel's attempts to laugh at him or mock his statement. The hero ends up on the floor, in pain and shock after the attack. Gregel laughs and claims that he has avenged his previous humiliation. He expresses satisfaction with his victory, demonstrating confidence in his actions. The hero warns the other character that if he does not put in the effort, all his training will be useless. Gregel asks when Edel learned such a level of skill, expressing surprise. The student admits that his sword is broken and he cannot move, indicating his weakness and inability to continue the fight. The young man says that he will have to teach Gregel, causing him to be surprised. This highlights the difference in their skills and training. The hero expresses surprise, asking why Alice is late. The girl replies that she was forced to run here because of a difficult situation. The girl reminds the hero that he always asked her to give up such methods. She adds that no one can compete with him, emphasizing his uniqueness and strength. Edel notes that the method has not changed. He warns that if training does not begin soon, he will punish Geyser himself. Gregel threatens Geyser, saying that he will make him regret his decision to confront him. This demonstrates his determination and seriousness of intent. The younger brother declares that he will no longer obey the older one, indicating a breakdown in relations. Gregel calls him a disgrace to the family and says that he does not care about him or the family. Two characters stand next to each other. Gregel expresses surprise or bewilderment. The servant tells him that he heard about Master Gregel being defeated by a commoner. Heisen mentions the royal castle and asks if the young man was the candidate for the title of Royal Knight. Another character suggests that Master Gregel's success may have been due to the educational philosophy preached by Mistress Maribel. One of the characters hints that if the purpose of their presence is to summon someone, they can leave. His tone indicates a willingness to leave the place if necessary. Heisen states that he will keep the other characters, but adds that he just wanted to get their opinions. The prince addresses the teacher with a serious expression, demonstrating the importance of their conversation. The teacher asks what the heroes are doing here. One of them replies that he just came by to say hello. The teacher confirms that he heard about the incident and asks if all the students are okay. The teacher admits that nothing special happened, but they still found time to meet. 4 heroes met after a long separation. The hero asks Marie how things have been at school lately. Marie replies that she has not used rejuvenation magic like he has, and so she has no particular changes or events to report. He adds that she hasn't changed at all since they last saw each other. Marie jokingly replies that a saint should always shine, emphasizing her reluctance to discuss age-related changes. Another character expresses dissatisfaction, saying that it is none of his business. He also notes that the situation at the school is more serious than he thought. This indicates that he has learned important information about what is happening at the school. The hero explains that the uneasy atmosphere in the school is due to the incident with Heisen and the aristocratic students. He says that he has already discussed this situation from the beginning, emphasizing the importance of the issue. The man adds that a country will be more stable if there is a clear hierarchy. His words indicate his view that order and structure are necessary to maintain public order. The teacher expresses disappointment, saying that the country could be led into chaos. Mari reproaches her teacher, saying that he should be responsible for his students. The hero tells of the master's swordsmanship, which was excellent, although his teaching methods were harsh but respected. He adds that the master was guided by others. The old man denies the accusation that he ordered the attack on them. He emphasizes that he is the head of the kingdom's swordsmen and could not have given such an order. The hero mentions the third prince Celine, causing surprise among the other characters. This indicates the importance of this character in the current situation. Mudchina says that before a certain incident, Heisen approached him several times asking him to dismiss the director. He asks the old man what he and Heisen talked about, emphasizing the importance of their conversation. The hero expresses seriousness, saying that his actions depend on the old man's answer. Another hero notices that the hero doesn't like him either, confirming the tension between them. They discuss what's going on behind the scenes at the hero school and wonder if it's on the right path. The hero asks if there is any evidence against the bandits hired for the raid. Another character notes that Zeon runs the criminal underworld, emphasizing his importance and influence. The old man admits that even if Heisen admits to working for the third prince, they will not be able to prove his connection to it. He concludes that further conversation would be pointless, pointing out the complexity of the situation. Marie, who tried to do something but to no avail. The old man says that this is just a pipe dream, emphasizing the reality of their situation and the impossibility of changing the situation. The teacher expresses concern, asking what he should do. He notes that all these contradictions can destroy their group and suggests that they just get along. Teacher Ramirez appears. Marie reassures the girl that she shouldn't worry so much. She assures her that if she dies, she will be able to revive her. The man states that he has never backed down and is ready to defend his kingdom to repay his teacher. Ramirez emphasizes that mages, saints, assassins, and warriors unite regardless of their species or preferences. The teacher encourages them to move forward, pointing out the need to act together. He says that as long as they are united, they are invincible, emphasizing the power of collective action. The heroes face off against a massive demonic creature, using the power of humanity to defend themselves. The man admits that he can't handle the situation alone. However, he hopes that if he is close to Edel, who was raised in the demon world, he can become his teacher. Alice expresses confidence, stating that everything will be as before again. She understands that this was not a training, but today they received the same task. She notices that her brother does not take the time to be noble, which has spoiled his character. This causes regret among the other heroes, who feel that even their brothers do not show compassion. Geisel explains why he wants to become stronger and change his family. The hero suggests moving on to a real battle, indicating a willingness to act. However, he notes that they have not had such experience yet, demonstrating indecision or fear of what is to come. The heroine reminds them that they need to be more aware of their surroundings. Edel also says that the two must work together to take over the place, emphasizing the need for teamwork to succeed. Geisel expresses surprise, saying that the training they received from Edel was so easy. Another character agrees, adding that the current location is much easier than the previous one. The hero notices the dungeon core and offers to charge it with magical power. He invites others to follow him, although they do not know where they are going. Edel explains that this dungeon core strengthens the dungeon's structure when magical power is added to it. The other characters look surprised and confused. The young man says he is going to strengthen the core. They plan to start the process in about 15 minutes. The hero emphasizes that he is not here to fight, but to complete another task. Edel expresses doubt, saying that he can only do so much if he uses his power. He notes that the object he is holding is very small and contains little magic. He realizes that the number and strength of the demons must be increased. He understands that the structure must be more complex to achieve the desired effect. Alice expresses discomfort, saying that her skin crawls. Geisel agrees, confirming that the situation is alarming. The heroes decide not to give up and continue moving forward despite the danger. They admit that the situation may be more difficult than they expected. They notice that this is a dungeon that is usually inhabited only by kobolds. However, they realize that the situation may be more complicated than expected. Alice notices something dangerous approaching. She feels that it might be kobolds, but their size seems unusually large. Geisel is surprised by the strength and size of the kobolds, which are much larger than normal. They wonder why these creatures are so big. The hero expresses awareness that the situation will be difficult and unpleasant. He prepares for the upcoming conflict or battle. Geisel actively fights against demonic creatures, using a sword for defense and attack. The girl notices that the speed and agility of the demonic creatures are unusual for ordinary kobolds. She is surprised by their strength and determination to continue the fight despite the danger. Alice confirms that the situation is indeed serious and they must act quickly. The girl states that they have changed and become stronger than before. She offers to show their skills and apply what they have learned. Hyzen addresses the orb, asking if it can hear him. The prince apologizes for the trouble and admits that some plans did not go as expected. He also asks how the director has been lately. The hero says they will have to speed up, showing awareness of the need to act faster. The director doubts the four heroes, but is still willing to cooperate. The man explains that he sent a hired killer to the strange student. The prince assures that he can handle the situation. He notes that the student who defeats Hyzen will be a problem for the Academy's final project, although this was not part of the original plan. He expresses his willingness to act for the stability of the kingdom. The man states that they must cooperate, and a mercenary appears who is hunting for Edel. The hero, who is a mercenary and came to deal with Edel, is called Dil. The man says it is a bit extravagant to kill just one student and asks if others agree with this opinion. Geisel is also surprised why there are so many monsters here, even though Edel trained them for real combat. He points out the difficulty of the terrain and notes that they have never been here before. Geisel finds him smart enough and assumes they are in the boss's room. The heroes encounter a massive demonic creature, which they recognize as an elder kobold and boss. Alice expresses her determination to attack the enemy, stating that if they defeat them now, they can deal with them later. She encourages the team to move forward. She notices that although the kobold is large, he is still nimble. The heroine is surprised to learn that there is a species of kobold that can shoot lightning. She is sure that if they hit it hard enough, they will be able to win. The hero asks if the enemy has called for reinforcements, expressing concern about the possible appearance of additional enemies. Alice approaches Geyser, proposing to work together. Her tone indicates determination and willingness to work together. Geyser confirms his understanding of the plan and urges him not to delay, stating that he must attack immediately. Alice expresses surprise or shock when she sees her opponent. This indicates the suddenness or strength of the opponent, causing her anxiety. Geyser notices that the opponent's magic level is insignificant compared to his brother's training. He emphasizes this by saying that he thought so. The heroes rejoice in their victory, congratulating each other for successfully completing the battle. They acknowledge that they have done a good job, emphasizing teamwork and achieving the goal. Edel asks why they haven't even made it a fifth of the way. The other characters are surprised to learn that they haven't finished the journey yet. The hero declares, "That's all for today." The hero confirms that that's enough for today. Edel replies that he does indeed have other commitments. The hero suggests that Dill leave the room or situation. Edel asks if he has any more questions. He adds that if they were trained enough, they would have figured it out right away. Dill wonders how the hero knew of his presence, pointing to the hero's magical abilities or observation skills. The hero expresses disappointment, saying that he has already had time to experience this. He notes that even if they call them shadows, they still remain behind people. The young man also points out that Dill is too emotional to be a killer. Dill exclaims in surprise when he notices another person. They note that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Heisen says it's been a while since they last met. He admits he hasn't seen him since Ibra. The hero asks what Heisen is doing here. Dill wonders why Heisen and Edel are together, since he failed his mission and did everything to silence the teacher. The hero expresses concern. Heisen claims that he is not dead. This causes surprise and bewilderment among those around him. After all, Edel himself saved him. Heisen reveals that this man, Dill, is considered one of the best. He also mentions that Ibrai's house is actually where illegal combat slaves and assassins are trained. The hero points out that no one can see through the man's shadow magic except Master Edel. He adds that it was just a cover, and Master Edel actually saved his life. Dill warns that attempts to deceive him will be unsuccessful, demonstrating confidence in his abilities. He expresses surprise to learn that in front of them is a mannequin made of shadows. Heisen expresses confidence, stating that Dill will not be able to escape. His tone indicates control of the situation and a willingness to prevent escape. The place is already surrounded by the subspace by Master Edel. Heisen adds that escape is impossible, emphasizing the strength of the defense and the difficulty of getting out of the situation. The teacher explains that it is a mannequin that leaves behind a high-quality replica. He also says that its real body is in another place, demonstrating cunning and preparation. Dill states that he is retreating for the time being but is confident that he will deal with everyone together. The hero realizes that Heisen is alive and understands the need to immediately inform the highest authorities about this. Dill expresses concern, stating that the enemy is capable of killing him. He notes that his killer instincts told him so. He adds that Heisen is not yet fully in control of himself and that the problem is him. The young man is surprised to learn that the enemy can see through shadow magic and even create subspace, raising questions about how he was able to achieve such abilities. Heisen will be a serious obstacle to their goal. Dill agrees, pointing out that the prince considered the man a dangerous opponent. They discuss the circumstances that led the hero to exile. Dill explains that this is why he needs to show the prince his fanatical devotion. He also reveals that he met the prince while he was at the bottom. Edel understands the situation and concludes that the prince is behind all this. The hero holds the enemy with force, declaring that he will not let him leave. The enemy looks surprised and scared. Edel explains to the enemy that his route was too direct and unprotected. The enemy is perplexed, asking how this is possible. Dill replies that the situation is funny, since he almost escaped. The hero firmly declares that he cannot allow the enemy to act in his own way. Dill notices the magic disappearing and wonders why this is happening. He realizes the connection with magic and knows he must tell someone high up about it. The Highness wakes up in his bed and asks the girl to leave his chambers. His Majesty asks the hero how the operation went. The prince notices that the boy is silent and asks what happened. Dill replies that it is already evening but looks thoughtful, slightly frightening the young man. The prince asks in surprise who is in front of him. The hero claims that he sent the killer to him. The hero reminds the prince that he forgot about the one he was going to kill. The Majesty suddenly realizes who is in front of him and expresses shock. He indignantly declares that the hero has gone mad, not believing his eyes. The hero confirms his words. He is Edel. Majesty angrily asks Edel what he did to Dill, pointing out the seriousness of the situation. The prince and Edel are in a room where the prince asks the hero what he did to Dill. The hero replies that he does not have to answer that question. The prince explains that he changes his bedroom every day to avoid assassination attempts. He wonders how the hero knew where he was. Dill suddenly tells the prince to run away quickly, who looks worried. The prince asks in surprise if this is really the Dill he knows. The hero confirms this, but his voice becomes hoarse, causing alarm. His Majesty expresses shock upon learning that Edel is controlling Dill's mind. The boy admits that he lost control of the situation for a few seconds, causing even more concern. Dill mentions that someone said something about the death penalty, possibly related to the person who ordered the murder. The prince expresses outrage, reminding him that treason is punishable by death. The prince declares that he will not tolerate insults any longer and will use his power as a prince to get rid of the offender. Edel replies that people who do not want to dirty their hands will definitely dirty their hearts. The prince categorically refuses to obey the hero, declaring that he will never allow him to control him. The prince points out that Edel will not be able to enter the premises as the security system is too strict. The hero adds that the young man can begin to escape if he considers it necessary. His Majesty assures that their security system is so reliable that even the royal palace cannot compare. He orders the house to be immediately put on high alert so that no one can get inside. Edel notices that there is no reaction on the surface and uses arcane magic to check. The hero determines that the object is underground. Edel notices something strange and asks what it is. He notices the cut is too clean and suggests that it could be the result of surgery. The hero continues his search, claiming that the entrance must be somewhere nearby. He carefully examines the wall and finds a small hole or door.